Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 309. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. Bart was my Flash until Grodd made me forget. So said the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You Know.
How's it going, eh?
On this episode, we're going to talk Flash number 9, Wonder Woman number 9, and Aquaman number 9. Plus, we have some great listener voicemails. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Supporting us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, I'm super excited for this. Superman Earth 1, the hardcover, Volume 2. This is a brand new original hardcover set on the Earth 1 universe with Superman. And the Volume 1 was absolutely stupendous. If you didn't pick this up, it's J. Michael Straczynski writing, Shane Davis on art. It's a whole creative team that really has just developed a brand new Earth with brand new Superman storytelling that's very fresh, very unique, very today. Feels very tried and true Superman. Volume 2 is $22.99 regularly, 40% off only $13.79. Volume 1 is available from them, $19.99 regularly, 40% off only $11.99. Volume 1 has my highest possible recommendation. Pre-ordering Volume 2 also has it, because I just really adored these. I'm a big fan of the original hardcovers because it's a different type of storytelling. There's a larger page count. The art teams know they're going to be a different kind of paper that they're going to be getting. It's a glossy paper. So it feels fresh, it feels special, it feels different than the monthly books. If you aren't picking any of these up, I highly recommend you getting an opportunity to check some of these out, because it's really cool and it's just very different than the monthly titles, which I love. Obviously, you know from the show how much I love the monthly books, but I'm a big fan of the creative medium of comics and being able to use different delivery methods to tell different kinds of stories and to take advantage of that through an artistic method as well. It's just really great. And these hardcovers are just knocking my socks off. So highest possible recommendation. Remember that they are a digital partner from Comixology, iVerse, and other such sites. And if you shop from their site, you can earn up to 5% from every one of your purchases towards store credit over at DCBService.com. So I highly recommend you doing this. I've linked my accounts, and it's just a great way. They've got amazing discounts already, and if you're doing digital shopping, it's a great way to just earn more credit towards your shopping purchases. So please consider doing that. It doesn't cost you any more to do it, but it does help them out, and they're a show sponsor, so please consider doing that. Over at InStockTrades.com, they are doing these deal of weeks every so often where they have these like 50% off deals that you don't normally get to see from InStockTrades.com. Batman Detective Comics, this is the first hardcover collecting the first issues of this brand new series. It's the first 7 issues with Tony Daniel doing the writing chores. 176 pages, $22.99 regularly, 50% off, only $11.50. That 50% off is just an amazing deal. I highly recommend, if you haven't been checking out InStockTrades.com regularly, they're doing more and more weekly deals. So it's a great chance for you to see if some of your favorite titles or new things that maybe you may have missed are on special. That's InStockTrades.com. And I want to thank both DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com for supporting our show. Oh, James, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
Raging Bullets podcast. You like comics, you like free, you like us.
Jim, for our first chat this episode, we are going to be chatting about Aquaman, issue number 9. The writer is Jeff Johns, penciler Ivan Rice, Joe Prado, Eau Claire Albert, and Andy Lanning on inks, Rod Rice on colors, Nick J. Napolitano letters, Rice, Prado, and Rice on cover, Sean Makowitz, associate editor, Pat McCallum, editor, and apologies for any name butchery there, because this has been an amazing book. This is on my short list of favorites, because 9 issues in, every single issue has been a home run. This feels like a AAA top tier, knock your socks off book, and I love it because it's Aquaman, a character who I've really grown to enjoy over the years, and it's great to see him in this top tier delivery of a book. I hope it's getting a lot of notice. I hope people who maybe never read Aquaman before grabbed this book because of the creative team and are continuing to find enjoyment with just how cool this character can be. I know because we've had many discussions off the show on Aquaman, but you want to share with everyone where you're at as far as Aquaman?
Oh God, I'm loving this. This is on my short list as well of favorite titles, and probably one of, if not the biggest surprise on how much I would enjoy the character and how much I would enjoy the title, just because, we read a couple cool stuff that I was like, oh, that's kind of neat, but I never really was an Aquaman fan. And then you start seeing what actually he can do, and you get these great characterizations of him. The love started, in Blackest Night with Mira, and we still have that same style of character. I don't know if exactly what happened with Blackest Night and these characters, but I do know that character that I loved in that series is still here. So, I'm Aquaman title. I'm just equally excited about the supporting cast as I am about him. And I think that, as we've said multiple times, is the sign of a really great title. If you're sitting there and the supporting cast has just as much energy and just as much enjoyment, then you're like, yes, this is it. The Mira episode, the Mira issue where she went shopping, I was eagerly anticipating it, and it completely, gave me exactly what I thought I'd get, and it was a great story. It was another one that just hit a home run. There was little to no Aquaman in it, and I still was howling and cheering and like, yes!
It's funny, we haven't seen Aqualad yet.
No.
And I'm not, I don't want to put this the wrong way. I'm not missing him. I'm excited for him, because I'm really loving him in things like Young Justice. I loved him in the cartoon. I've loved him in that comic. He's a character who I really enjoy, and I liked him prior to the New 52. But I'm glad that they're not rushing to do that. Like, when it's time and it's right, I'm assuming their plans are still to introduce him. But it's not something you need to rush out on the table right now. There's way too much going on in Aquaman. There's really no need for it right now. And when it happens, it's going to happen. It's going to be cool. But this whole other storyline, this other Justice League storyline showing Aquaman's past before he was in the Justice League, this team that he was with, what brought them together, and how it's not clean. It's not like Aquaman being a traditional hero. This is what I've always loved about great Aquaman storytelling. I refer back to the Peter David run a lot. What I loved about that run was it wasn't clean. Aquaman, because of the fact that he's king of the sea, he was, Atlantean, he had this dual heritage, there were times where Aquaman could be your strong, tried and true, colorful hero that we knew him as kids, but then he also had this dark side to him that came from the duality and having to make tough decisions as a king. A lot of times as a sovereign, those tough decisions led to going to battle against the surface world and different things like that. So I love that duality of his is being brought into this. This is a guy who has a temper, will make mistakes, and has to deal with those mistakes and learn from them and try to become a better person. And the Aquaman we're seeing in this book is the Aquaman who's continually trying to become a better person and to figure out who he is in the world and where he belongs in two worlds. I really love that style of storytelling with him. I think it makes him a unique and interesting character in the DC universe, and they're really touching on everything that I think makes Aquaman work. This is why I've raved about the character on the show in the past. I'm so glad that this title is hitting every single beat of what makes Aquaman just a fantastic, fantastic character. This is a character I want to see on TV or on film. This guy.
One of the things that I really like, it's little small attention to details, little bits in there, especially like with people referring to them as Aquaman and Aquawoman. They both don't like it.
Yeah.
They're like Aquaman, Arthur, Aquawoman, Mira. And just they keep always referring what their real names are. And it's not like the secret identity, the hidden agenda. This is who he is. He would much rather someone walk up to him and call him Arthur. She would much rather someone call her Mira. And I'd like that distinction of them as heroes. Yes, they have these titles. Yes, they have these superhero code names, and they know them. They don't want them. They just want to be Arthur and Mira living in the lighthouse by the sea. And you have that overwhelming just human story for these non-humans, and I like seeing that side of them. And it's we always talk about with Clark, where we like seeing him out as Clark Kent, not as always as Superman. We get some great Clark stories. Well, we get some great Arthur stories now, and it's him dealing with the world that knows he's Aquaman, dealing with the world, and yes, he sometimes has to step up and do a hero thing, but he really he doesn't want to do it anymore. He just wants to, be himself and live his life and, just continue. And I like that hero side, that side of the hero that doesn't want the dun-da-da adventure.
This book, one of the things that I really love about it is it's a great creative team. Writing's top-notch, the artwork, letters, everything, colors, it's all put together so well. This is a team that meshes and gels, and it seems like they all lift each other up. Like they push each other to do more with this book and take it to the next level. And every issue to me just feels like it's pushing the envelope more and more on what you can do with Aquaman and his world. I love how this book opens up in Germany. Did you ever read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy with Douglas Adams? Did you ever read any of that stuff?
Yeah, but it's been so long, I actually don't remember pretty much anything of it.
Remember the babblefish that they shove in the ear to be able to hear aliens of different languages?
Yeah.
I don't know why. When I saw Manta shoving that fish-looking thing into the sign just so he could read it, I kept thinking of the babblefish.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because he shoves that thing down there, and it's psychiatric hospitals written in German. And he hits that right on there, whatever it is, that fish, because of the magic. And that's something I'm really loving about this. This mixture of magic and Atlantean powers, and because Mira has a magic background to her. Her people have a magic background. Aquaman, though, has the Atlantean background that we're used to. And I love this kind of feeling that there's not just one kind of underwater group, if that makes sense. I like that there's an underwater world to be explored. We've seen in issues here where they've revealed secrets to Aquaman about his underwater world that he didn't know about. And there's so much, when you think about how much water covers the earth, and this is stuff that Jeff Johns has talked about in the past at conventions leading up to this series, there is so much underwater to be explored that you can really open up a lot of different storytelling and set up, a whole universe down there that has really been untouched. And I'm sure there's past Aquaman characters you can bring into this series and things like that, but there's room for new as well. So there's going to be a nice balance in this series of bringing in classic Aquaman with new villains and friends and allies and people that Aquaman didn't know, and gray areas, all kinds of cool gray areas that can be explored. This book really has unlimited potential to do, and that's just underwater, not including all of the things they can do on the surface. So that's something I'm really enjoying about this book, is just the new things that we're finding out, because really a lot of what we're discovering in these current issues right now has been some of his relationships on the surface world that developed over time. But there's an underwater set of relationships that can continue to be explored in this book too. And I love that we've got different land and sea adventures that can interact and intermix. I don't know. I think this is just a terrific title because of that. The potential has me excited.
Oh, big time, big time. And it's funny, you just mentioned just how you wanted to give full props to the creative team. This opening sequence where they're in the hospital, when we see the prisoner, and it's just a simple, subtle scene, but there's so much cool stuff going on as it's dancing between the reality world, looking at the pictures. There's slight art changes, slight coloring, just little variations, and just a shift here, a shift there, and then you have these non-traditional panels just layered on top of each other. I love just how this kind of flowed through, going back and forth between the photos and the reality pictures, and just little changes there, but I never got lost. I never got confused. I never said, "Hey, what's going on here?" You can just, and it was just a great, simple flow through. But in the simplicity of it, you get a really complex picture, and that's something that I get a lot from the Aquaman title. Is we have some of these great boom scenes, but we have these lead-ins, these just, this little dance that leads up to it. And that's something that really gets me with this team, how it's a nice build to the pop. And when you get the pop, then you get a nice run right after it. So you get this explosion where Manta's attacking him. Then there's a couple more cool fight scenes, and we go back to a nice slow, nice build, and bam, another explosion. I love the pacing, is just how everything's laid out here. This is a really home run on creative team.
You know what I really appreciate on the color work? The light sourcing. He's sitting at that desk, and he's got that light on. And I love how the pictures that are on his bulletin board are reacting to the light sourcing. You know, that's something that I thought was really a nice attention to detail. Even when you look at the bulletin board, you can see how the light source is affecting the picture. You can see kind of a sheen when they get the close-up shot of him with the girl, you know, where that hello is. You see light source being reflected on him then in later panels. I'm a fan of that. I think to me it adds a real-world set. Like, I feel like it's a film, it's alive, it's a TV episode, something like that happening. It just adds a sense of atmosphere and tone and brings a reality to it. I'm a big fan of suspend my disbelief when I'm reading this stuff. Make me believe this is really happening. Comics do that for me when I'm in that. I'm pulled into the moment. I'm pulled into the action. And the build to this, to Manta walking up behind him, I thought was fantastic. I do want to say one thing. I think because I've been watching the Young Justice cartoon, and the Young Justice cartoon, Aqualad has the buzz cut in there. Or, you know, the short haircut, I should say. I was thinking at first, I'm like, is this where they're introducing Aqualad? Then I realized, like obviously a few panels in that it was the prisoner. But that was like my first thinking. And I think it is just me kind of wondering, you know, is Aqualad or when is Aqualad going to be introduced? And that's, I'm not disappointed in how they obviously it was terrific how they handled this. But it was funny how my head went there, and I think it is just because of the current cartoon series that my head went there initially. And that's not a knock or anything. I just loved how this all played out.
Well, when you think about it, they're really this story arc right here so far has given some really good setups and good lead-ins to introducing that Aqualad. You know, because they're bringing in reference to family and, you know, loved ones and giving Aqualad's lineage. I think definitely this story could very easily lead into an introduction of the character.
Now, the prisoner's powers, or curse, I guess, is that he's doomed to carry the memories of his fallen comrades. Is that on his neck, the dog tags? Is that for each of the people that he's pulling into himself?
Yeah. I kind of took it, it's kind of like Ragman, where he contains the souls in him and he can use that energy for his own, you know, to help him. Because you see him pulling in different soldiers at different times. I think, you know, whereas Ragman, they're trapped in the rags to, you know, make amends for something they've done. I don't think these are guys who make amends for something. I think they have the tragedy of dying. And when they die, a piece of them remains with him, and it's kind of locked into him, and he can never be free of them. So he always has these memories and these lives going through him, which would drive you mad and would be a bit maddening, having just a never-ending torturing. But I'm pretty sure he gets power from that, and he gets strength from that, and he can use skills.
He does, because you see that sequence where he goes to pull the gun from under his bed, which I love that it had one bullet. Shows how tortured he is. But when he pulls that up, you actually see the sniper behind him. So he's pulling that skill set when he's shooting.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I love that these skills are being brought in. The skills of the medic when he was pulling the dart from him.
Yeah.
The art detail behind this. When he's jumping out the window, pulling skill sets there. It's really terrific. I really think that's neat and a cool use of powers. I was really protective of him during all this because I'm like, no. I want to follow like a mini of him or something because like I'm really digging what's going on with this guy right now, which to me is I think a great introduction of a group of characters that we've never seen before and making use of them in a way that like they're interesting, they're colorful, each one's unique. They don't feel like throwaway characters, which is really important to me because this is a team that had an importance and a very important role to Aquaman. And even though we're seeing people killed along the way, we should feel like these are important, living, three-dimensional characters that had a very important partnership and background with Aquaman. That, to me, is just the attention to detail there is stellar. Because I feel like they've had a rich history, even though I haven't read it.
Oh, definitely. They're building. And again, it's, you know, it was funny when you were sitting there saying how you had kind of protective of this guy. I was nodding my head big time because this is a character. I was like, oh, man, this could be an interesting guy. And I don't want to lose him. I'd like to keep, you know, some of these characters around because one, it will make, you know, for interesting future stories. But two, I do feel kind of bad for this guy because of the torturing, the survivor's guilt is a huge thing among soldiers and among anybody who's been in combat or even any stressful, extreme environment. The survivors from 9/11 had survivor's guilt big time. And it's, the fact that, people, normal people, everyday people have it. This guy has it to the extreme because he still has those people going on inside him. He still has those memories, those dreams, those hopes, that semi-connection to life going through him. So he's even above, one notch above it. So I felt for him almost immediately. Once I really got a grasp of what was going on with him, I was like, oh man, this guy's a pretty cool character. And I like seeing him scramble, bob and weave. I was like, okay, maybe he's going to make it. Maybe, and the whole time I'm sitting there like, come on, dude, you can do it. Come on. And I was rooting for him.
In the Amazon rainforest, we see Arthur and Uira, or whatever. I know I'm butchering her name. I don't know the pronunciation of it. But, she's kind of got that Shauna the she-devil kind of thing going on. I really like her as a character because in her role, she is not afraid to kill. She's from the jungle. She's got that kind of survivor-hunter skill going on. Is that how you're reading her? Like she's this hunter kind of character?
Well, I kind of take it she also has some communications with nature, some communications with the animals. Because that one scene when the guy's begging for his life, the art scene there where the light reflection, it kind of looks like she's summoning some cats.
Is that why when the cat's killed, she reacts so violently?
Yeah.
Because the cat was shot down, and there is that connection with the animal. So this is murdering one of her friends, one of her allies, and that brings the tigers out, which is what Aquaman's trying to... They kill my animals, they die.
Yeah.
That's I really liked that aspect. I'm glad you pointed that out. It's Yawara, I think it is. Is that how Yawara? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah. Okay. I was calling her cool jungle lady.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I agree with that name.
Correct pronunciation of her name.
Yeah, and if I'm butchering it at all for anybody out there, I'm just trying to get the name because I love the character. I really like the character, and actually love the name. I love that the name is something that definitely comes from a different cultural background. I love that kind of stuff. So I'm into the fact that I don't really know how to pronounce the name right now because of that, because I think it just makes the DC universe more interesting when they introduce characters like this. She's another one that I'm protective of.
Yeah.
And I like the way that she reacted there. This cat is her ally. And I mean, people and pets, I mean, I don't see, and I take this as beyond being a pet. These animals are allies. So there's a very different relationship. I mean, I'm very protective of my pets, but I think this is a level beyond that. Are you reading that way too?
Oh, definitely. Definitely reading. This is, as I said, there's a connection there. And, it's beyond just, they're not cannon fodder for her. Those are her friends, her family. Those are, I would assume probably I'm going to make a generalization on the character. She was probably raised in the jungles, and this is, family. This is her people, and it's not just not just summoning, a couple cats to kill. No, this is a part of her. So, yeah.
What I really like about this and what I like about the relationship with Aquaman and Mera, this is a couple whose past, even for how close they are, for the fact that they're married, they both have deep, dark secrets in their past that neither has been aware of. And they're revealing these things, and it's really a test for a couple. How much do you trust the person that you're with now and the relationship that you've had with them, that you can move forward in spite of the secrets? Because these are big secrets that are being revealed for the two of them. The stuff that we saw with Mera, I'm assuming everything from Blackest Night and Brightest Days happened with these two. Because there's no reason to really think that they haven't, because that stuff's happened for the Green Lantern books, right? Are we assuming that still?
Yeah, I believe so.
So I'm assuming that's happened on some level for the DC Universe. So that's happened to Aquaman. Regardless, I guess my point is, Mira's secrets that we saw revealed in the past, I'm assuming, are a part of this. So Aquaman's gone through that with her. Now she's going through that with him and finding about this other league that he was with and things like that. So it's an interesting relationship there to find out about this woman who Aquaman's had this strong history with. It is something, I know if I ran off with a girl running around in a bikini, my wife would have a fit, rightfully so. I'd do the same thing if she ran off with a guy in a Speedo. So, I mean, this is the type of thing where I understand. And adding on the fact that this person seems to know so much about Arthur that she doesn't. that's also, in any couple's eyes, a violation of that couple relationship. Like, why does she know this about you and I do not, kind of thing. That's a line that Aquaman and Mira are going to have to deal with. I love that kind of thing going on, and with all this great action and this great intrigue with, each of the members of this team that they were on. They're having to say, okay, these are our former allies. Where are each one of them at now? Are they alive? Are they protected? And they really have to prioritize who do they go to try to help first, which is what I see happening here, because they know they're behind the 8 ball. Manta's one step ahead of them, and they want to close that gap and overtake him to stop any harm coming to their former allies, and maybe regroup on some level with anyone who's still around that they can get together. I love that intense, smart regrouping and gathering. These are people that have been through these type of missions together before, and how do we make sure we all walk out of this, or as many of us who can, at this point, as many of us who can still walk out of this, walk out alive. And I love that. I mean, it was just a few panels that pulled that together, but a lot of story told in just a few short panels there that really just gripped me. I love stuff that happens where the writers give us and the artists give us just enough to get our minds thinking. Adds more depth to the page. I want the page to feel like more than just the panels that are presented. Make me think. Make me take it beyond where you're already going on that page. You don't have to give me everything. You have to get my mind going to let me take it there on my own. That's something I'm a huge, huge fan of. It adds depth to a storytelling, and that's something that I'm really digging about this book. It's smart.
Oh, big time, big time. And, one of probably the coolest lines for me in this book was Mira, when she's talking to when she's questioning the doctor. And I love her style. Tell me everything you know, or I'll pull the water from your brain. That right there is just that's a tough threat right there. That's, what? I would be confessing on that one, because you know what? You look in her eyes, she's telling you the truth. That's not a bluff.
I love her character. I just think she's absolutely fantastic. I think I don't want to say it's a reimagining of her. I love her strength. I love that, she's not just like the doting wife. She's a partner, and a full partner with her own story. Her story isn't Arthur's story. It's her story, and they have come together and been a couple. And there's something very unique and rich about her. I echoed with you, but I was still on the side of I wanted Aquaman. But you were talking about how much you wanted a Mira series coming out of Blackest Night and Brightest Day.
Yeah.
I totally agree. You need her in this role. The storytelling with her is just as rich as the storytelling with Arthur in this. And that duality in this book makes it feel like a buddy book, a team book with a husband and a wife. I'm not a fan of the fact that, there seems to be this thought that a married couple in comics isn't interesting. This book is proving that point. Creative writers, this is why I've always said I don't think a married Superman or Lois Lane's the problem. It's you need to be able to tell creative stories with those characters to make both of them just as influential and interesting. This book is showing you how to do a married couple in comics, because it works.
Oh, big time.
And with both of them, neither of them's losing anything because they're married. I think the fact that they're married makes this story right now all the more interesting, because there's going to be backlash from this between the two of them. And what is that going to be like? How are they going to have to deal with that? That's interesting for me on a character level. I don't want every character married, but boy, wow, when you do it with characters like this, you got two combustible elements there with tempers. And I'm with you. You don't want to mess with Mira.
Now, am I the only one who went from really hating this doctor to understanding him, then going back to hating him again?
Oh,
I was a roller coaster with this guy, because
I was just going to say that.
When they first started talking, I was like, dude, man, why, and how, and what were you thinking? And then as you read it, then reread it a second time, I'm starting to go, okay, I understand a little bit. Yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from, and but it's wow.
Amen. It was funny when you said roller coaster. That was exactly what I was going to say, and I agree with you. He is a great example of what I was talking about earlier with gray areas. There's been times where, if Mira had sucked the water out of his brain, I would have applauded. And then there's other times like this where there's moments in the story where I'm like, okay, there is a compassion to this guy. But there's a greed to him, too, where it's all about his work and his notoriety and all that. But I like the humanity of him, and it's one of the things I think I'm starting to become, I don't want to say fond of him, but I admire the development of him. Because I do feel like he is really being developed as a very well-rounded human with a very selfish side. But yet there is a compassionate heart in there as well. There's remorse, there's guilt. Yet there's this sense of entitlement to him as well, where he feels like, I deserve these things for my brilliant mind. So he's not just a one-dimensional character. There's so much to him that there's times where he feels like a buddy that you just want to smack upside the head and say, be better.
Exactly. Because, some of these moments when he's sitting there talking about, my life work and everything, and I'm like, dude, man, just what the heck? How could you even think of selling out a little kid? This wasn't even selling out an adult Aquaman. He was going to do that to the little kid. And you just see that one scene where he's like, I became a joke. I lost my credibility, my only friends. And I felt sad for the guy. I'm like, I wanted to reach in there and give him a hug and say, it's going to be okay, buddy. It's going to be okay. Things are better. But then the next panel, you sit there and you start saying, no, he's a jerk. He sick Black Manta on Aquaman, on a child Aquaman.
Right. That was one of the things that I really loved about all this was you're sitting there looking at him, and you say to yourself, okay, you can admire the fact this guy's had drive for his career, and he's put so much work into it, and you can see how that's his dream, and losing that dream would be something that would cause him to make this horrid mistake. I do like that this guy, there is a sense of remorse. You see it in his face. Shame. Maybe not remorse as much as shame. I think there's a distinction between those two feelings and mood sets. Because shame means that maybe you don't necessarily feel like you've totally done something wrong, but yet there's that part of you where you don't want other people to know that you did it. Because he feels justified in the sense that am I right? That he deserves still this notoriety and this need and this notice because he's so brilliant, but yet he doesn't want Mira to know, like, hey, but I did this. Yeah. And there is a difference. Am I right? Do you feel that way? I think shame and remorse, there's something very different in those two emotions. And I would say shame is probably a better thing with what he's doing because I don't know that he's necessarily apologetic for everything.
It's a tough one because on one second I'm thinking, yeah, he's being remorseful, and then you read a little bit more as to what he was fighting for, and there's even times when he's like, trying to justify what he did. So that takes away the remorse and makes it more shame and makes it more of, it's why, as I said, it's why I said he's a roller coaster with me where at moments I'm right along with him. At other moments I'm like, Mira, take the dude out, get rid of him, just pull the water from the brain, please. Let's dehydrate him a little bit. He's one of those characters that I do go back and forth on, and he's a supporting character, and that's something that always just like when I catch myself going, I'm putting so much time and energy into this guy tells me that it's a story that I'm really enjoying, and it is part of it's some of the artwork that pulls me into this guy. Because I feel bad for him. Because you can kind of see the sadness. You can see the shame. You can see the remorse. You can see just that maybe he's not such a bad guy. And then you reread what he's saying. You're like, you know what? Maybe he is a bad guy. Maybe he did deserve to lose everything because he did something colossally stupid.
But then this brought Manta into Arthur's world. Arthur's father died from a heart attack. And see, I kind of want to know more of that story. I want to see that event happening to see how much I believe Manta was or was not responsible. Because I do believe somebody can be responsible for somebody else's heart attack. I think if you push somebody enough, you traumatize somebody enough, you can be considered responsible for that.
Oh, definitely. But I'm with you where I want to see that story play out because I want to exactly see where the line crossed. Well, who created who? Did by Manta killing Aquaman's father force Arthur's hand? Was it Arthur's father's death really an accident, but Aquaman's rage caused Black Manta to emerge? It's the question of what came first, the chicken or the egg, and I really want to see that in the connection between these two. Black Manta is a character that I know next to nothing about. So getting this story, getting this background, getting this kind of birth of the character is something that I'm really appreciating because going into this, I didn't have a long history. I didn't have very little knowledge. I just knew he was, Aquaman's main nemesis. I didn't even realize know whether he's a meta or whether he's a guy in a suit or who and what he is. So everything that's laying out here, I'm kind of enjoying because I'm getting more pieces to the puzzle. I'm learning more about who he is.
Do you remember from Super Friends?
I vaguely remember him from Super Friends, and I vaguely remember thinking he was really lame.
Yeah, so it's one of those characters that I remember from Super Friends, but I know him from plenty of Aquaman storytelling since. And I got to tell you, echoing your comments, you're talking about it as a new reader. You're loving the introduction to him. I'm a fan of this. We refer back to Gail Simone's Wonder Woman run a lot of times being one of those definitive runs. One of the things I really liked about her when she was on Wonder Woman is she took the lasso and gave us kind of I don't know if you want to say an origin, but more of maybe a clarification of things we didn't know about the lasso, taking the lasso to a whole new level. That's what they're doing here with Manta for me. It's not a contradiction to anything in the past. It's more of a clarification of who he is, what his driving is, and what's driving the rage against Aquaman. And, along the way, yes, they're going to be telling something new and giving you a new direction for that relationship between the two. But it's always been he's Aquaman's main nemesis. I like that they're just really defining a reason why these two would be at opposing odds. There's been a lot of variations in what that relationship's been like over the years and how it's been told, but they always wind up at this point that you get at the end of the issue with the two of them standing there face to face and toe to toe, and you're really believing these two have a reason to go at each other. I love that. I think that's a clarification that puts us all on the same page. I'm intrigued by knowing, okay, what is that relationship like in the New 52? One of the things I really like about the New 52 concept is, as a longtime reader of Aquaman, I have no issue with any slight changes that they're doing along the way to the relationships between heroes and villains and backstories, because this is a new universe. So you can have those iconic, tried-and-true moments where you feel like this is my Aquaman, this is the guy that I love. But when you change and alter things a little bit, it doesn't feel like it's foreign. It shouldn't be there. It's a new universe. That's the brilliance of what they've done in allowing creators to have this kind of storytelling here. You don't feel like it doesn't work. And yet it doesn't contradict anything that's come before because those happened pre-Flashpoint. So I love that. I love that I'm not sitting here going, oh my gosh, this isn't what I totally remember as the story being. It's like, no, this makes sense. It's a new world. And because of that and because of the changes to that world, there are going to be, yes, the nemesis. These two are going to be, opponents and at odds, but there's new moments that can be told here that feel natural and feel right for this world. And that's something I'm just finding real. I think it puts us all on the same page where you're in that newness feel to this. I'm in that newness feel to this, yet there's enough familiarity and core excitement to it that makes me feel right at home with a character that I've loved for a long, long time. I think that balance is really, really important when you're doing this kind of thing. This book, if you're listening to this and you're not reading Aquaman, this book has the absolute highest possible recommendation. One of the things, there's a thread going on Facebook where I really ask people, what titles do you want people to get notice of? And I was really going for smaller titles when I was mentioning that. Titles that, you think they're falling under the radar, that you want people to get noticed. 'Cause I think it's really important. People are always looking for... There's 52 books being published by DC. That's not including miniseries and specials and things like that along the way. So when you got these 52 titles going on, not every book is going to grab every person the same way. I love the variety, and that's one of the reasons why are we so positive about this. I'm enjoying the fact that this 52 lineup is so rich and so diverse, and the characters are very different, and you've got this book that's got a slow build, while this book just has intense pop, and you've got characters that are coming from all over the world, all over the universe, and they're trying new things along the way, and when something doesn't work, or it isn't getting the sales number they expect, they're throwing in a new book and new creative teams, and let's get excited about that. But... and the reason why I'm going back to this point, I'm a big believer that there's an audience for every one of these titles. I want to see new readers jumping on these books. This is a book, Aquaman. If you were saying to yourself and you dismiss this because you're like, it's Aquaman, I don't want to read an Aquaman title, you are missing something immensely special in this title. This, to me, when we talk about the Trinity, we talk about Green Lantern being a part of that whole thing now. Aquaman, to me, this is one of those A-list books. This is up there with Batman. This is up there with Superman. This is up there with Green Lantern. If you are not thinking about trying this book out, you're making a mistake. You're missing something special. These books are being collected in gorgeous hardcovers. I think Aquaman was a hardcover. If it's not, it's a trade. And I don't have that in front of me at the moment. But whatever version this is being collected in, I can't imagine this not being a hardcover. I'm going to say if this isn't a hardcover, that's a mistake. But this is a book for anyone out there. If you haven't read it, grab the hardcover or trade or whatever it is and read the opening of this book. It's only 9 issues, so it's real easy to jump on board this. A lot of times I'll tell people to, just jump on the current issue and try it. I gotta say, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't just grab it and start reading it from the beginning. You want to experience the whole thing. I think you can easily pick this up with an issue and decide if it's a book for you. But I highest possible recommendation to read the whole thing of this. It's great. It's a great, great book. You're missing something if you're not reading this.
Oh yeah, and this last page that shows those two squaring off, well, for me was just I was sitting there and I'm like, my second read through is always my art read through, and this was a page where I just sat there and just stared at it for a while and just started noticing a lot of the the comparisons between the two. Like Aquaman has his trident strapped to his back, Manta's got his. You see them standing there, just like they kind of have very similar, just that combat warrior pose going on. And I started noticing, like on the side of Black Manta's neck, he has the red outline of what I think are gills. So kind of adding to the breathing underwater sort of, style to him. And there was a lot of just little cool stuff that I was noticing in this. And just, this is a image that I would love to have as a poster or, love to have this, blown up image. Because this is another one of those intense, moments that artwork just really, sells the picture and sells the story.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is it's a gorgeous, gorgeous book. Now, here's the question. Do you have an issue, like, if we find out Aquaman, and I'm guessing this is a really strong possibility, we're going to find out Aquaman committed murder to get revenge. Do you think it's going to be that clean? Because it says Aquaman killed Black Manta's father. Now, in a fit of rage. Is it going to be as simple as Aquaman went out and killed his dad as a revenge? Or is it going to be something where he went after Manta and killed his dad? What happened, do you think? Do you think it's going to be that clean? And do you have an issue if he actually went out and killed his dad? I'm not saying that you think that's heroic or anything like that, but I would see this as being an Aquaman who maybe then would be needing to show remorse over a mistake that he made.
Oh, I definitely would not have an issue if, one, I wouldn't have an issue if he did it out of the fit of, rage, fit of anger. And, I understand, there's the human nature behind people. Sometimes you lash out, and I'm taking it that this occurred as a younger Aquaman, not the adult Aquaman did that. So I'm thinking as a child, maybe he doesn't have complete control over his strength. Maybe he didn't have complete control over what he was doing. You add to the whole emotional side of it. It just, it's well, I don't want to say justifiable. I want to say more of an accidental homicide. It wasn't a premeditated, I'm going to go out and kill him. It was one of those things where he probably was going after Manta and something happened and the dad got killed. That's my assumption. Now, I could be completely wrong. He could have said, eye for an eye, life for a life, I'm going to get your dad. In which case, because it's Aquaman, I probably wouldn't have an issue with it because his style, his personality, his core of who he is completely different than anyone else.
You're wording
Bruce, I wouldn't hate that if I saw Bruce Wayne go after, the father, the guy who killed his parents. That doesn't fit him.
Right.
Arthur, it does.
That's exactly what I was asking. You worded it so much better than I did. I was really questioning it with this character. If they had that in their background, how would you feel about that? I'm not saying I want Aquaman to do that now. Although, it's funny, if he did that now in a fit of rage, I don't know that I would I guess I wouldn't have an issue with the storytelling. I want to see the reaction to it. Because this is something now he's going to, I don't see him trying to justify it. Because everything I'm seeing from him, especially when Yarara in the woods was going to try and kill when she was killing people, he was stopping her, saying, "This isn't what we do. This isn't how I operate now. I've changed." This is a guy who's evolved from the guy who perhaps killed Black Manta's father in the fit of rage. And I want to see the story as well. But I like that there's a guy who's come to a point in his life where he realized that was wrong what he did to Manta's father. That's the interesting storytelling for me. It's not that he killed him, and I'm not sitting here saying, like, I want Aquaman running around killing people. I don't want that. I want the reaction to it. How did this affect Arthur? How did this make Arthur a better man now? How is he dealing with the... and this is a guy who... Now, I want to see Arthur have remorse over that. You know what I mean? You know, I want to see an Arthur who, like, regrets that happening. I don't want to see just the shame from him. I want to see the remorse and regret, too, over his actions.
You know what, for me, it's really Arthur, Diana, and any of the Green Lanterns. Mm-hmm. I am okay with them having to take a life in their course of action because their character, who they are, it fits it. You know, someone like the Flash, Batman, Superman taking lives. Those are the ones that I would have issues with. Arthur and Diana are warriors. They live by a warrior code. I understand taking a life. Any of the Green Lanterns are cops. Cops, sometimes you have to take a life in the course of duty. It happens. You don't want it. You don't try it. You don't always go for it and say, yeah, this is cool. But sometimes it happens. So those are the characters that I'm kind of accepting of them taking lives, them doing what needs to be done. You know, it's who the character is. It's what fits that character.
Yeah, that's. I'm with you, and that's. I want to clarify that I'm not sitting here saying I want our heroes running around killing people and stuff like that. That's not what I'm looking for. When events like this happen and they're used in a story like that, I agree. Your comparison with Bruce Wayne, I totally echo. I think there's an interest. One of the things I love with Damian having killed in Batman and Robin, this is a Batman who won't kill. Bruce does that. He's got a no-kill code. He's got to deal with the fact that his son has. And I loved how he had to deal with that and really had to be supportive and try to be, a good dad and be there for his kid in a situation that normally we're used to seeing him ostracize people for, which I think showed a different side to Bruce Wayne there. We saw the father be there for his son, which is interesting. But I would have had a bigger issue if Bruce Wayne killed.
Yeah.
And there's things that I find that are very interesting about these characters. I love that there should be different rule sets for each one of them as far as what you can do storytelling-wise because of the type of character that they are. And you have to know at their core who these people are. This, to me, is Aquaman. It's very tried and true to the storytelling of Aquaman that I've enjoyed, to his anger, to his rage. But then there's that soft, honest, kind side that's going to have remorse that's there too. And this book has had such a balance of I don't want to say the duality of him because we're underselling him. This guy has a lot of facets to him. He's an incredibly interesting character, and they've really shown they've shown a humor to him. They've shown a rage to him. They've shown an anger to him. They've shown an annoyance to him. But then they've also shown a heroic side to him and a guy who fights for justice, and he's got a code of honor. And then we've seen this innocent boy still. This man who's still an innocent boy on the inside who's trying to find his place between two worlds. And I find that interesting. Where do I belong? Am I of the earth? Am I of the land? Am I of the sea? In the end, I still firmly believe in the end he's going to find he's part of both. And I think the only way for him to find that sense of belonging is to find a way to resolve that, which is very hard to do. How do you be a man of two worlds? And he's going to have to somehow come to terms with that. And I like following that journey. It's not a journey that's easy, and it doesn't feel easy in this book, and that's something that I'm also finding engaging.
Amen. I'm just sitting here nodding my head, going, yes. This is some of the cool stuff that is that I didn't expect. And it's funny because I say I didn't expect it, but I should have. Knowing that it was going to be written by Jeff Johns, I should have, kind of expected this multi-layer storytelling and just, not just boom, here it is. No, there's these little side nuances, and I should have expected that, but I was still surprised by it. I was still surprised by how much story you can tell with Aquaman and with his backlog and with his past. But there's a nice freshness to it, and there's a different approach. He is that different type of hero that I'm really glad I'm getting out of this.
You know, I refer a lot to the show on the Peter David run of Aquaman, and the reason why is it was, for me, as a reader, it was the run that opened my eyes to how cool Aquaman can be as a comic book character. And, you know, I've gone back and gotten showcase volumes, and I've read a lot of the older Aquaman stories, and I just love the character now. But that was my gateway, really into understanding that Aquaman is more than we saw in the cartoons. And I love the cartoon Aquaman, but you know, I love that this book acknowledges the fact that that's traditionally considered he was a joke. You know, the interesting character is the one that's been developed in this series. And I feel this is one of those definitive runs that I applaud and refer back to the Peter David run. This run is in that category of being that intense top quality. One of the things I love about Jeff Johns as a writer, when he jumps on a book, when he jumps on a character, he really tries to look at all the storytelling over the years with the character, going back to their beginnings, all the way on through, and tries to incorporate all of the best elements of each era into the character, and somehow bring pieces, parts of all of that into there, so there is a connective point on there for the new readers, but then people who've read at any point in time along the way the character. And I'm hoping people who've been longtime Aquaman fans, because there's people who've been longer Aquaman fans than me, you know, as far as reading him in comics, I'm hoping that they're all finding that sense of that this is great Aquaman storytelling and finding a home here with this book, because I do think it's special. And I do really, I'm hoping for new readers that this is an opportunity to really, because this is a book I want to see to have a nice, long, powerful run. Because it's, to me, it's one of the more engaging New 52 titles. It's definitely on my short list of titles that I'm just being blown away. There hasn't been a bad issue. There hasn't been an issue that's just been good. Every issue's been outstanding of this book. And that's why I say it's a AAA top tier, highest possible recommendation book. I'm positive on this show about a ton of titles that I'm really enjoying, that I think are good books. This is a great book. And every so often when you hit those special books, you really want to hammer it home that, like, no, this is one step beyond. This book is one of those.
Through the magic alchemy of nature's most awesome sources of energy, Ray Palmer, atomic physicist, becomes the atom.
Our next book will be Wonder Woman #9. The writer is Brian Azzarello, pencils by Tony Atkins, inks by Dan Green, colorist Matt Wilson, letterer Jared K. Fletcher, with Cliff Chang on the cover, associate editor Chris Conroy, editor Matt Idelson, and Wonder Woman was created by William Moulton Marston. I gotta say, I'm slowly building on Wonder Woman, and this is something that, you know, when issue 1 came out, I was reading, I was like, yeah, this is kind of cool. This is all right. You know, it wasn't the previous Wonder Woman runs. It wasn't the Gail Simone run for me, because that just had that honor code, that Amazon building, and just, you know, who were the Amazons? Who are the Amazons? It's the details of the lasso. There was just so much stuff that was going on beyond just this really cool hero who kicks butt. And when this Wonder Woman started running, that was the main kind of feel to her. I'm like, yeah, this is the Amazon, this is the warrior. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. But as these issues have gone on, I'm seeing more of the strategist. I'm seeing more of, you know, just the warrior and not just the violent slash hack slash warrior. I'm seeing there's more levels and more facets to her. And then as the gods are starting to develop, and I'm liking these non-traditional look of the gods and actions of them and just how they're being handled in this book. This is a title that's, you know, as I said, it's growing for me and it's building, and it's something that my, you know, closeness and attachment to this title is much different now than it was issue 1. I am very much definitive of this, defender of this, and I actually would probably get in arguments with people over that there is something more to this. It's not at the, you know, the level where previous runs were, but it's something that, like, I can eventually one day, I'm going to look back at the Azzarello run and say, you know what, that was a really good run. He had some really cool Wonder Woman moments in there, and he had some really cool God stuff going on there.
It's funny, this is a book that for a little bit I was stockpiling. And I don't mean that in a negative way to the book. It's just kind of one of those, I've been enjoying it. Echoing your comments right from the get-go, I read a bunch of these issues together because I went back and reread because I'm like, okay, I stockpiled about 4 issues of this, and then I went back and read like a bunch of them. I almost wrote right to the beginning, went on through. This is really good. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm really enjoying this now, and I agree with you in the build part of it. Where, like, at issue 9 now, I'm invested in this book. I really like this. I think it's really good Wonder Woman. It's different, and it's a different exploration because her status quo has changed, her world has changed, the gods have changed. But I got to be honest with you, I'm really finding, at the core, this is really tried and true, really solid, good Wonder Woman. It's the stuff surrounding her is different because our New 52 world is different, but she is Diana. This is her. This is her world. And her reactions to it are very Wonder Woman. That really is what I needed. By issue 9, I'm heavily invested in this. Your comments about this, it not being quite yet one of those runs, I would agree. But I'm with your comments, too, that this is building to be one of those memorable runs that in the end you're going to look back and go, wow, that was really awesome. And I really think this is going to be an awesome, awesome run because this is a book I wouldn't drop in a million years. I think the art is fantastic. I think the story's really, really great. The gods are becoming very engaging. I like the way they're being handled in this. I like the different take on them where it's getting to who are the gods, what should their personalities be like, how should they dress and act and look in a modern world. And that's really the presentation that we're seeing here. It's a different look on it. It's like, how do we get people interested in Wonder Woman but not lose Wonder Woman? That's what I'm liking about it, because sometimes when you do this kind of thing, you lose the character, the main character you're supposed to be following. They're not doing that. I really feel like this is Wonder Woman. It's Diana. It's the same character at the core that I've always known and loved, but the surroundings are very interesting. I got to ask this, and this is going to seem like a silly question, and it is. Was I the only one looking to find the truck driver when the explosion happened? You know what I'm talking about? The one in the background who was watching them when they were chatting. The explosion happened. I think I found him because when War goes to leave and says, now if you'll excuse me, I have to tend to other things, he almost walks over him. I think that's him that War is walking towards. I'm not sure, but I really was I was playing Where's Waldo with the truck driver. I wanted to see where he was. He wasn't. I didn't see him anywhere in the shrapnel when everything was being blown up. But was that his truck that was exploded?
Well, that was his truck that exploded, and dude, I don't think he was caught up in you see him hightailing it out of there before the truck blew up. That was a suicide bomber. So he was parking in a crowded area, a lot of people, and then hightailing it out of there and detonated it remotely. I don't think he died.
You think he did that on purpose?
Oh, I definitely.
And they just sat there to watch?
What?
And they just sat there to watch?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Strife and Ares. Come on,
Yeah, that's a good. Well, and it's in Damascus and all that. Okay, I can see it. Which is why he's acting so nervous when he's walking away.
Yeah. That's him going. Doing the little whistle as he's running away because he's like, this is about to blow. Got to get out of here. So
we can see him again later. Well, he's not a suicide bomber then.
Well, no, he's not a suicide bomber. He's just a bomber. A car bomber.
Wow.
This is the blast scene. I was going through and just looking and counting the bodies and counting the different things that you see throughout it. And it was just I was like, wow, that is, that was a wow moment with the artwork. Because, again, leading up to when I saw the guy first taking off, I kind of thought, I'm like, this guy, that truck's about to blow up. That dude's not just running away. That was a great art piece because it showed... Yeah, I really saw time to go look on the guy's face. And then you flip the page and, Strife is saying it'll be a blast. Boom, as the truck is going up, body parts and
tiny
pieces
details
and whatnot are flying all over the place.
Look at War's cup. War's coffee cup shatters.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved those details, like how the two of them are sitting there mid-blast. His hat even comes off. I like tiny details in art. I really appreciate artists that take time to do things like that because it's stuff that I find interesting. You mentioned your art read-throughs. I love doing that too. I love going back and taking a little bit of time to take a look at just the flying spoon. It was funny how this turned into one of those art pieces where I was just looking for objects that were being thrown around in this whole. I thought it was really, really great.
The bloody footprints as he's walking away.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. And he had that blood on his leg before that. That's his normal look. Is this old hunter with the blood-soaked feet and just, again, it's another different look of the god of war. I've always pictured a soldier, a warrior, the big buff, I'm war, I will kill you all look. And you have this feeble old man looking, but that this feeble old man is a massive killing machine. And this is something that is just, it's kind of like the nature of man, just the destructive nature of man. It's not the young, the young bucks, the young powerful people who are doing most of the killing. It's the old men who are saying, kill that person, destroy that village. It's the people in power who are actually the instruments behind the death and destruction. And I kind of like that usage, that imagery of war, in this case.
It's real interesting how war seems to be at a stage in his existence where he's grown tired of it all, including the war. Like, he's had enough of everything. It's, excuse me, I have to tend to other things I don't care about. Now, here's my question. Do you believe he really doesn't care about the marriage? Because he did that grrr when she mentioned that it was Wonder Woman that Hell was marrying. Was she egging him on purpose to see if he'd perhaps get involved? Is there still a possibility he will?
I think there's always going to be a possibility that he'll get involved. And she definitely was egging him on because she's strife. That's what she does. She enjoys annoying people. She enjoys, putting the little doubts, and she enjoys the chaos and the anarchy. That's who she is. She's going to, every time we see her, you always should expect her to be pushing someone's buttons, annoying somebody, or, just trying to egg them on just a little bit beyond what they normally would go for.
One of the things that I really enjoy about good Wonder Woman storytelling, and my favorite runs of Wonder Woman have featured this. We always refer to the Gail Simone run, but I go back to the Perez run, straight on through to Mesner Loeb's, and every one of those runs has had this in common: a great developing supporting cast. When we see these characters, this crazy, strange band, Greg Rucka's run had, when she was more of a diplomat, had a wonderful supporting cast that was in her embassy. This is a great run that has a great supporting cast. And this is where the book is really growing on me. Love Diana, but I'm really getting into Zola and Lennox and Hermes and just all of these characters that are coming together, and gods that are making the decision to side with her, to stay out of it, or to go against her. This is really an interesting set of circumstance that's being developed here. That's something where I think the book is succeeding for me. I think I've figured out why for me this book's had a slow build. I think it's so many new variations on characters and gods and things like that. It's taken me a while to get used to them. I don't think that's a bad thing. This is an ongoing story that's developing. I'm getting to know so many new characters and new players. It's not a continuing run of Wonder Woman. It's a new look at Wonder Woman. I'm into Diana, and she's been my latch-on point, but characters like Zola and Lennox and the gods that I'm mentioning, it's taken me a while to wrap my head around them and get really used to what's being done here. The more I'm getting used to them and the more I'm getting into their personalities and getting attached to them, the more I'm getting attached to this book, which is why I'm going to go back to and echo your comments about I really feel like this is going to turn out to be a very special and memorable run, because the more I'm getting to know them, the more I'm enjoying it. I don't know if you're having that same experience. That's what it seems to be for me. It's getting to know the characters.
Oh, big time. And I've got enough of a knowledge of the Greek gods to make me dangerous. And it's, I'll have, different characters flashing around in my head, and I'm like, is that so-and-so or is that so, and it's, so I have a comfort level with them. And that's, I think, for me, was just the start and just that jump. I was like, okay, we got the gods, we got new versions of them, we got different variations of them. And I think it was getting a comfort level with the gods and getting a comfort level with these gods that I really had no idea who they were other than just a moment, like with the blacksmith. I really didn't know who he was or know that much about him as this, when I first came into this. But then it's as I'm reading the stories and as we were introduced to his wife, which is Aphrodite, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, now I remember this guy. And it was, it's these other characters and these other usage of them, so it was kind of it's another build on this, and it's pieces and parts coming in together, and it's my connection to this, and it's something that's really helped me get a closer bond to the title. And these are the supporting cast. I'm passionate about Mira. I'm passionate about Lois and Jimmy and just all of Clark's supporting cast, and of course the Bat family. And now Wonder Woman has her solid family. I want to see what happens to Zola after the kid is born. I want to see what happens to the kid, because that's the child of Zeus. That's another demigod. And what's going to happen to that child? What's going to happen to her? What's going to happen to Lennox? What is going to all these different gods? Where is the final battle going to play out? And where is Zeus? They keep saying he's gone, but he's Zeus. He's the father of the gods. He's the head the head man. I can't believe he's completely gone. And that's what I'm wondering when this kid is born. I was thinking that, boom, Zeus is going to pop out and say, hi, I've been here the whole time. This is not actually my child. This is actually me. Surprise. And I'm thinking something, crazy like that's going to happen. And that could change the whole dynamic, could change everything around again.
As in high school, I took in my senior year astronomy. I didn't need another science, but I mainly took it. First of all, there's only one section of it, so there were friends of mine that were taking it, and I took it specifically to be in a class with my friends. But I also took it for, you mentioned your love for the gods. Well, Greek and Roman gods was something I've always been fascinated by. I've always been interested in the storytelling leading them, and I figured, with astronomy, you're going to be exploring the constellations, you're going to be getting the stories of these characters. We did that for about 2 weeks, then it was all math. And I was sitting there like, no. I'm here for the gods, and I want to know, tell me the stories of the constellations. I mean, we had a planetarium at our high school. I figured we're going to do all kinds of cool stuff with the planet, which we did, but it turned into a math class, which I like math as well, but it wasn't what I was signing up for. I've always, I love stories involving the gods. I've loved video games involving the gods. I've loved films involving the gods. It's always interesting to see the interpretations that different writers and filmmakers and game makers will take, bringing the gods and their worlds to life. Because I think mythology is so fascinating to me. I don't pretend to be some kind of mythology expert. There's a lot of times where in this, I'm with you. There's a character will be introduced, and it'll take me a little bit to figure out, especially because they're doing new interpretations of them. But I love when you hit that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, that's who this is? I'm with you. That is something that I'm really, really enjoying about this. And I think that's why the book continues to grow on me and get more and more exciting with each issue. It's when I'm kind of finally clicking. That's who it was. That being said, Hermes was one of those characters that immediately I loved the portrayal of. I love the way that they've used him in this. And it's always been a god that I've liked. I don't know what it is. I think maybe because I always liked the Jay Garrick Flash, that I think that's a god that I've always been there's something welcoming about him. So I'm glad that in this book they've gone that route with him right away, where he just seems to be accessible, welcoming, and he's a buddy of Wonder Woman, right from the get-go. They're comrades at arms. That was something that I like. I also really like that these characters, we're not doing an origin of Wonder Woman. There's an assumption that she's been operating for a while. They know her history. They know her from when Paradise Island was around. There's something I like about that. Now, we don't need to go back to the origin right now. We're going to say the basic story of Wonder Woman. We've now shattered a lot of that with telling you some of the truths with her being the daughter of Zeus. But everything that you knew before about the basic story of Wonder Woman is in play. So we're now moving forward and showing you what Wonder Woman's like in the New 52, what that world's like, how it's changed. I like how different gods seem to have different relationships for her, but they all seem to respect the power of Wonder Woman, the survival skills of Wonder Woman. I love that some of them are very protective and some of them are resentful of her. And that's something and some of them just don't care, don't want to get involved. Those three things seem very real to me, to the gods' personalities, and there's something I find interesting about that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definite. And it's the characterizations of them and who they are. It's been something that I've really enjoyed on this. I've really enjoyed on this run now. I'm getting that, as I said, I'm getting that comfort level with it. And it was kind of neat just seeing them starting to lay out the game plan of the quote unquote rescue of Diana. And I do say quote unquote because I'm not 100% certain she's going to need their rescuing. And I like the fact that, the blacksmith actually brings that up and he says she can kind of take care of herself. She'll be okay. There was a really neat way of how they're going about it. It's not your traditional storm the castle. No, we're going to the wedding because I have an invite. Okay, we're just going to go to the wedding and everything will work out in the end. And I just like seeing that the fact that there's this plan going on that we don't know ahead of time. We don't know exactly where this is going to go or how this is going to play out. And along the way, there's going to be a couple twists and turns.
My question is, how does he know she doesn't need saving, though? Considering that moment. And I really like that. I'm going to be curious to see what happens when they show up there, because they're going to show up with a gift. So what is that gift going to be? One of the things I noticed in his artwork, I don't know why I've never noticed this before, the leg braces that he's wearing.
Yeah.
I love that kind of tiny details about another quirk with these characters. And we shift into seeing Diana with the bullet wound and how that bullet wound is not healing. I wonder if that's going to be an ongoing thing.
My guess is while she's in hell, it won't heal because that's the kill blow. The killing strike that kills you, that stays with you for all of eternity. That's your death mark. So that's going to be there for as long as she's in hell, that's going to be there. And when she gets out, because, eventually she will, I'm assuming that will heal then, and that'll be the sign that she's out.
It's interesting when she recreated, when Paradise Island was recreated there. I love that it's almost like a black and white film.
Yeah.
How it doesn't, it's a memory of the past. There's like a dark gothic beauty to it. It's dark, though. There's a darkness to it. And it's, with the red sky and the presentation. And it would be something that's cruel, and that Persephone, points that out as being something that was cruel, and how she was once his wife, and she knows what Diana's going to go through and where her world's going to be. The horror of an eternity of this. Like, she's stuck there forever. I was once his wife. So what is she now? Well,
now she's just another person in Hades, because Persephone in the traditional was she's the daughter of, and I can't think of the gods now, but she was kidnapped by Hades.
Right.
And because she had eaten some of the pomegranates, she had to stay down there 4 months out of the year. And that's the whole story behind, the seasons, because while Persephone is down in Hades, there's no, that's when the winter months are on Earth, because the gods are punishing the Earth because the daughter's down in Hades. And then when the daughter comes up, that's when spring happens. And that's the whole story behind that. But I'm taking it that...
Oh, wait, I got parents. Her mother's Demeter, and the father's Zeus.
Okay, so
how many of Zeus's kids are he's going to marry?
He's got a lot of kids out there. Zeus, Zeus was a player. He was the original player. But I'm taking it that what she did was she tried to escape her time in Hades by killing herself, but... that sort of damns you to Hades. So it's like, I don't think she thought it through clearly.
One of the things I really enjoy about this book, we talked about the artwork in Aquaman. It's something I'm really enjoying more and more about the New 52, is that the books, we're seeing more and more books with unique art styling to the book. And this is one of those books that has, again, unique art styling that I think just really matches the style of the story that's being told. I really like the art of this book. I love the character designs. I love the world designs. Diana's design's terrific. I'm going to say I've seen a number of conceptual art pieces that they've shown, especially when they were showing teasers for the collected edition of this, of her with the pants. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I prefer the new costume with the pants, but I love the artwork in this. I think it's a great-looking book. Every character, every page, I'm really enjoying the artistic presentation of this book. That's something special. And I think that's going to add to the feel that this is one of those, again, another definitive Wonder Woman run, which I think is going to be remembered because of that as well. Just the great story and how beautiful it looks.
And speaking of how beautiful it looks, the Aphrodite sequence.
Oh, that was great.
That was outstanding. One, naturally, she's going to be au naturel, and okay. And just the way the clever art panels covering up the areas.
Talk about a great way to handle censoring what needs to be. They let you know what's going on without letting you know what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of that. That's great. But I love how everyone's in awe of her, male or female. And it's real interesting how humble Aphrodite is when talking to Zola, and how she's boosting up her beauty to try and make Zola feel better and feel good about herself. And I don't know, I just really, really enjoy the personalities of the gods as we're getting to know them. Now, when we see Hades, is that Kronos then? That's his dad?
Yeah, that's his dad. When they took over, he kind of when they killed him, he goes down to Hades, which is the underworld, so he can pretty much do whatever he wants with the dead. So let's throw him make him part of my throne.
Part of the throne? He is the throne.
He is the entire throne.
I mean, wow. Now you gotta be pretty bold to wear a birthday cake on your head and sit on your dad as a throne. I mean, I love the whole birthday cake motif. There's something with it being flames and on his head, and I know that's wax dripping down his face, but wow.
This is such a different another dramatically different interpretation of one of the gods that when I first saw him, it did throw me, but I kind of like the creepy factor of him being more of a childlike body with the flaming candle birthday head. And I'm just like, there is a creep factor to him that kind of fits what Hades is.
He's like a creepy, spoiled kid.
Yeah.
Yet there's an intelligence to him, too. But it's that creepy, spoiled kid factor in there that makes you're afraid that he is going to go off the deep end at any moment and have a tantrum. I guess that's kind of what I'm looking for with him, is a tantrum. What's
that classic Twilight Zone where the kid could do whatever he wanted with his mind?
Yes.
And everyone was around him that were all like, scared what was he going to do next? It's that same type of creepiness that they have, that Hades presents. There's this little kid that is this ball of firecracker, of hate, of rage, of contempt, of just every possible nastiness that can happen. And you really don't want to mess with him. You don't want to anger him. You don't want to get on his bad side.
Well, I'm a teacher. I love children. I think kids, at their core, all kids are good. I think the world, sometimes circumstances, will put them in situations where they'll make choices that they shouldn't. But I tend to believe in the human nature the positive nature of the show comes from the fact that I tend to have a positive outlook on people in general. I think people at their core are inherently good. That being said, the movies that have creeped me out the most are movies like The Omen, where you've got a kid who at the core is evil. Because it was the devil's son and that type of thing. So this pulls in everything from The Omen because it's not something I believe. I don't believe kids are evil. I believe kids are good. So when you see something that goes so against your personal belief on, the role of people at their core, that it's life that makes people that way, not that they're born that way, it adds a creep factor. And I think this harkens more to an Omen kind of thing for me, where I'm like, oh yeah, there's a creepiness to this guy because of the fact that I do believe at his core he's evil. So I don't know. There's something I really enjoy about that. I don't know if that movie affects you the same way it does for me, but that is, to me, one of the scariest horror movies I've ever seen. I love scary films. That one, though, creeps me out.
Well, you know what? I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside.
Wow.
I was going to sing that, but I figured, nah.
One of the things I love about what they're doing in this book, though, is when they're creating each of these areas of the gods, like Hell and Hades and stuff like that, and you see the souls lining the streets. Are the souls making up the buildings, too? Is that what I'm seeing there?
Yes. They are the energy. They are the life force. And that's how he made Paradise Island, was by manipulating the souls. He can do whatever he wants with them. He can craft any world and make it look like anything that he wants. And it's his whims that, says, let's do it this time. Let's do it this way. Let's do this. And it's that I thought was a really cool usage again of the power that is, Hades and what he can do. He's not just the ruler of the underworld. He's not just the guy who governs it or, decides, okay, this one gets tortured this way, he gets this. He actually can manipulate the underworld itself and do whatever he wills with it. And that, again, it adds to the creep level. It adds to the power level.
One of the things when I'm looking at Diana getting dolled up, they painted her face that greenish tint, right? Or is that because she's in the world? Because they're doing the powder?
Yeah.
So is that makeup that's adding to that tint that's on her?
I'm thinking that's more coloring just because there's, because you see later on she does have more of a flesh tone to her.
Okay.
So I'm thinking it's more of just, it's not a, brightly lit area. There is the shadows, there is the overcasts, but then when she steps out and the pops into the light, you see more of the flesh kind of tones to it. But there is a bit of a green to her, too.
I wonder if part of that's because she's dead, too, though.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, that could be the whole, zombie Wonder Woman stuff.
Yeah. I love that the lady that dresses all Lady Gaga. Instead of a neat dress, it's a hand dress. It's like I really enjoyed how, like, Hades' children were their own warped, deformed selves, but they're also threatening her. If you shame him, we will rip you to shreds and feed them for eternity to every rat that has ever existed and yet to be born. So not only are we going to kill you, we're going to tear you up and feed you forever to rats. I mean, wow.
I kind of like on her dress the W that's right there.
Yeah.
There's some really cool art stuff where you start just looking at just the little details, like the chain links of the links of chain that makes up her shawl. So it's kind of like the chains, the burden, the binding, and that. But it is also the bride shawl, laid out. So it's a combination of the traditional. Yes, you would have your lace runner or whatever that, I think it's called a runner or whatever it's called. But in Hades, it's links of a chain because, it's going to be a little bit torturous. And then you got the hands crawling on the dress that makes up the dress and the soles just completely surrounding them. This was a creepy, cool wedding that, on one hand, I'm like, and I could probably see some sort of gothic type people going, hey, that's something neat. Let's try that. And there have probably even been people who have tried similar stuff to this, but there is still some traditional wedding elements to it.
It's interesting with Hades' relationships. There's always that issue, does the person really love me? And I was glad to see that brought into this mythology. We're sitting here, it's been brought to my attention that you might not actually love me.
Yeah.
That this could be an elaborate ruse on your part, used to secure the freedom of the mortal girl. And I love how this goes into this whole bargaining of saying, hey, will you wear your ring before the ceremony? If that will prove my love to you, I accept it. And it's the lasso of truth. Now, here's my question. Am I nuts in thinking that I think Diana's going to pass this?
I think Diana's going to completely pass this because I don't think that's the lasso of truth. I think that's the wedding gift from Hephaestus, the blacksmith, where he forged what looks to be the lasso of truth, but in reality, it's not.
Nice.
That's my personal guess as to how this is all going to play out.
Very nice. I wasn't thinking that at all. That's super cool if that's what ends up happening here. Wow.
Yeah.
That would be the wedding gift.
Yeah. He said he had to make the wedding gift, and I'm pretty sure he's the original forger of the original lasso, so he could probably make another one.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that a lot if that's what ends up happening. I didn't think of it that way, but boy, I think you're onto something there. I think that's really cool. I don't know. I think the whole story is interesting. It is funny. The more, it's as we talk about this book even more, I'm like, wow, you know what? I'm a lot less on the fence about this book than I think. I really, really like Wonder Woman. I mean, I'm really, really enjoying this book, which is really neat. And it's funny as I'm looking at the artwork more and more, as I'm paging through it while we're going there, I'm like, well, this is really a very, very pretty book. And I think one of the things, it's funny, we've got 3 books we're talking about in this episode. Ravagers we're going to move to next week. But the 3 books that we're talking about in this episode, Flash, this, and Aquaman, all have something in common in the sense that I feel that they all have great writing, but they also have a stylized art that fits the title that's being presented. And I really commend the art teams for really taking a look at their style choices and their design choices for the world and the characters, and really making each book feel unique, fresh, and having very much its own personality. Because that, for me, I'm reading a lot of comics, and the ones that I'm finding I'm enjoying the most, and this is where Wonder Woman's entering into this category, are books that are unique and they're different. And when I read them, I get excited because the last issue of the other title that I was reading before I got to the Wonder Woman book, it looked very different. It felt very different. It had a different vibe to it. It's like I'm watching a new program that I'm excited about on television, if that makes sense, or a different kind of film. I'm not watching or viewing or reading the same thing that I just did before. This is something different. It's giving a different kind of mood. It gets me in a different kind of place. And this book is becoming very, very special to me. And it's something that's grown over time. I've really enjoyed Wonder Woman since the relaunch. I think it's getting better and better as it goes along. I'm going to go again and say, I wish they'd kept her in the pants. That's the only thing that I would say about this, because I actually liked the pant look of this outfit, which I didn't think I would say. But that's a tiny thing. It's a nitpicky thing. It isn't changing at all my enjoyment of this, what I think is a great Wonder Woman book. And I think if you've never read Wonder Woman before, this book is a perfect book to jump on for that, because I just think it's a great character, it's a great title, and it's a great use of relaunching the universe in a way where, okay, let's tell a Wonder Woman that has enough for the longtime fans of the character that they can feel at home. But again, like we talked about with Aquaman, there's a lot of new that everybody's experiencing together. And it puts us all on an even playing field with the character in a way that I'm really enjoying. This is really, really another good title from DC. And it's another one that I'm hoping that people don't dismiss. You mentioned before the fact that it's a female lead character. That being something that you kind of shied away from. And I think for anybody that hasn't read Wonder Woman, you really got to give this character a chance, because she's another one, similar to what we talked about with Aquaman, a lot of depth and diversity to her. She's also not a one-trick pony in her personality, her emotions, and this book has captured that as well. She captured the love and compassion of her while still capturing the intense warrior side of her as well. And there's only more to come. I'm excited to see the wedding, though, next issue, and what comes from that.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, it's looking forward to it. And Strife has just been absolutely wonderful throughout this. And those wedding sequences, because you got all the bright souls, and then you got Strife right there. And that was another art moment that you see, just the look of enjoyment on her face as she knows. She's like, I got Wonder Woman, and I'm dying to see the table turn and just dying to get out, and just the look on Strife's face when it happens. That's another thing I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I love that she's an interesting, I don't want to say gray area, because she's not really a gray area. I take it that she totally loves chaos and craziness going on. But I love that she loves seeing a train wreck, and that's what she's there to see. She wants to see a train wreck. And that she's like going to be totally, I don't think she cares how this plays out. She knows it's not going to play out well.
Yeah.
On some level for somebody, and that's what she's there for.
Yeah, you think about it, if Diana doesn't really love, Hades, and she gets hung, and then she'll be tortured for all of eternity. Yeah, cool, she wins. If Diana does turn the tables on Hades, and Hades is upset, okay, cool, she wins. It's kind of a no-lose situation. The only thing that probably would happen that would be considered a loss to Strife, if there is no chaos, if the wedding goes off without a hitch, there's no problems, they're happily married, and the loving couple lives on for eternity in this crazy mixed up world. That's the only thing that would be bad for Strife, and we know that's not going to happen. Right.
I agree. It's a good book. Let me ask you a question about this book. Has this been a book where you've ever been like, it's on the chopping block, it's not quite, because for me, it's never been there. I've always really enjoyed it. I think what's happening now, I'm noticing, I think your comments about the build earlier have been exactly how I felt about it. Every issue, I'm getting more invested in it. And I've enjoyed it since the beginning. It's becoming more, it's bumping up my stack every issue that comes out. That's where I'm at. Is that what you meant by your build before, or are you in a different place?
Yeah. It's never been on the chopping block, but it hasn't been that go-to title. It hasn't been I can't wait to the next issue. I can honestly say that issue 10, I am eagerly looking forward to. And when issue 10 comes out, I'm going to be attacking it, and it's going to be one of the top reads. It will be a Thursday read.
Yeah, this is no longer a stockpile book for me. This is a book where I'm really invested in the storyline now. I'm with you. I am very excited for it. Like, I want to see how this is going to play out. And it's been because of the build. I think the story has built to a point right now where I'm like, ooh, yeah, no, I want to see. Wow, there's so many elements and players involved in this. That's where the book's been a masterclass, because it's crafted a world that now you've got this group over here doing this. You've got this group over here doing that. You've got this person watching here who might get involved, might not get involved. We don't know. It's how is this all going to play out? That's something that just, to me, it's just a pure joy, and I'm smiling from ear to ear now because this book's in that place for me. Wonder Woman, another cool book.
Look at those strange little beetles. They look... Great neutron!
Hey, Raging Bulleteers. My name is Jason. I kind of stumbled across your podcast a few weeks ago and really enjoyed it. I've actually, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, gone back and listened to all the episodes going back to when y'all started on the New 52. I just really appreciate the way y'all are kind of handling that. I grew up on comic books, but kind of, as a kid, I always read, like, a lot of Marvel stuff and then Batman. And really didn't get into DC until the Identity Crisis miniseries, and I saw that first issue at the shop with that awesome Michael Turner cover of these guys that I recognized from, like, the old Super Friends cartoon. And anyway, I picked that up, and I still think that's one of the best miniseries ever, and it just really got me into a lot of the more mainstream DC comics. And one of the things I've enjoyed about your show, and you talk about, I've done a lot of talking about, like, well, what would you cut if you had to budget, or about times in your life when you've had to cut books due to budget, and that's kind of where I am right now. Getting ready to propose and start a new family. I've had to make some cuts in my comic book subscriptions, and anyway, I really appreciate what you guys have done with the New 52, because there's some books that I used to love getting and I can't get anymore. And I really have enjoyed the New 52. And I guess, I don't know, some people might listen to your podcast and hear about how awesome some of these books are they're not buying and feel like they're really missing something. And that's valid and true. But I guess for me, I'm really thankful for your guys' podcast, because I can listen how awesome some of these books are that I'm not getting, and feel like I'm maybe not missing as much. And I get to hear you guys talk about it, and, you do a really good job of not just hashing the story, but getting a lot of elements and a lot of the reasons why it's so cool. And anyway, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the way y'all handled it on the podcast, because it makes me feel like in the interim, when I'm kind of limiting myself to a few core DC books and a few core Marvel books, and then what I've kind of done is I'm rotating in and out of different books for different arcs, and that's kind of how I've personally, like, pared my titles down. But anyway, again, I just want to say thank you guys. Really enjoyed catching up on the show, and just your enthusiasm for the comics is refreshing, and so I appreciate it. All right, take care, guys. Bye.
I'm really glad for Jason's call, because it's one of the things that I've always hoped with the show. We read all the titles, and one of the reasons why we do that is, first of all, because we're enjoying them, but second of all, we're trying to hopefully be as in the know and as comprehensive as possible. With the depth we go into in issues, it's hard for us to cover every single book. There's always room for more. That's why it's great when you see more specific podcasts, like the podcast of OA, which actually is going to be talked about in one of our later voicemails, coming up to talk about specific characters. That's where you can get that kind of comprehensive of that specific character. There's a lot of great Batman podcasts out there. A lot of them are very good friends of our shows that are doing that, where they're specifically Batman focused. But one of the things we try to do is, and it's one of the things we're doing another series now of episodes where we're going to try to go back through and cover every DC title gradually over the summer, while at the same time touching back on some of the key issues. Like next week, for example, I want to talk about Earth 2 #2, because obviously there's all that, I don't know, controversy is the right word, but, you know, with what's going on with Alan Scott and that, I think it's an issue that we're going to need to talk about, just how we felt about it and the handling of that issue. So that's one for sure we're going to talk about next week. But I think that's one of the things we're going to do in our summer series when we go through this. I want to touch on every New 52 title again. And my hope with that is not to tell everybody that you've got to buy every single little thing. It's for people like you on a budget who are trying to say, okay, which arcs should I jump on? Or, you know, if I've got room for one more title, maybe there's that one that's kind of, for me, it's so-so. Which one of these books is the one that, you know, when I'm hearing Sean and Jim talking about it, wow, I'm hearing about this storyline, and that sounds like something that would really grab me. That's where I want to try and shift my budget to that, be able to make room for that book. So maybe maybe I'm dropping this book that's kind of not grabbing me and I'm pulling in this book. So a lot of what he's talking about is a lot of what I hope for the show. It's really to help people find the books that are right, so they have that top tier stack. Because I really am genuinely enjoying everything I'm reading right now. He mentioned as a kid how he was mainly a Marvel guy and read Batman. I kind of had that experience in the sense that as a kid, I read certain Marvel titles, I read certain DC titles, because I didn't have much budget. It was always a joy for me when I got a chance to pick up comics featuring characters that I didn't read monthly. And this is both with Marvel and DC, Malibu, Valiant, any comic company out there. When there were characters in Image, when there were characters that I wasn't reading before, it was always fun to read them because they were different and there was something unique about them and the storytelling was different. It's one of the things I love about comics. Doing this show, and I think where it's helped you and I, Jim, we're exploring characters that either we've read in the past on very limited levels, but never had an opportunity to read monthly and read their full adventures all the way through. And I'm loving the top-tier classic characters as much as I'm loving the smaller characters, the more unique characters that we don't normally get to read and explore. And that's kind of fun, but I hope it helps people point to the right books. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, or...
Yeah, I think you covered it.
Sorry about that. I was kind of rambling there, but his phone call really connected with what I think and what I hope is a lot of the theme of the show, helping people find the right budget for them and the right books that fit into that budget so they feel like every title is exciting. Because I think that's what comics should be. Comics should be what you and I get out of them. And if you're not getting that feel, I really hope that people change up what they're reading and go for that top tier, top of the stack read every single week for themselves.
And actually, just something really quick, because you mentioned how much you loved Identity Crisis. We did do a pretty in-depth discussion on it, and I'm drawing a blank as to when we did it, but it was some of our earlier stuff. So if that, you can go through the archive and look and see where, we did it, and that may be an earlier episode you might want to listen to.
Yeah, I think didn't we did a series on the different crises, right?
Yeah.
So
I want to say it was like a big number. I think it was like in the 10. Was it maybe 10 or?
I don't remember. Yeah, we did that. We did Infinite Crisis and we did Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah,
we did them all together. You're right. I think it was around 10, somewhere around.
I think it was the 10 extravaganza. So it'll be like 10A, 10B, 10C. In the early days of Raging Books, we had some interesting numbering of our episodes.
Yeah, it got to be kind of a running joke. Especially, I labeled one Schwa-E at some point in time. It wasn't 10, but just because we were having a little fun with the numbering thing. Because there are actually people getting angry about our numbering, which I thought was great. I mean, they're just numbers. It's the content. Hopefully you're enjoying. I don't know. I hope. Thank you for the kind words in the comments. And I actually am impressed that you went back to those, because that's a lot of listening to go all the way back to our beginning of our new 52 episodes to go all the way through. So I appreciate that you found enough value in what we do that you went back to listen to all those episodes. I'm amazed every month when I see how much traffic our older episodes get, going all the way back to number 1. And I really appreciate anybody listening to this right now that is taking the time and go back gone back to listen to our older material, because we pay Liberated Syndications, who we go through. And one of the things that I really like about being with them, and I've always liked about being with them, is that they host all of the previous files on there and make them available for download. And I don't know, I'm glad to hear that that listeners find value in the older shows, and then they still go back and listen to them. So thank you for anybody that's a newer listener that does that. And thank you for those of you that have been with us all the way through and listened anyway. So it's great.
Hey, Jim. Hey, Sean. Just want to talk about my experience at Wizard World Philly this past weekend. It was really fun. I got to meet a lot of great people. Got to meet Dean Cain. Super awesome. He's a really nice guy. Got to get from it, which is really cool. And got to get pictures with people dressed up as my favorite Batman villain, Poison Ivy. That was pretty awesome. So, yeah, I had a great time, and looking forward to 2013 because we got Wizard World Philly, Man of Steel, all that stuff. And, oh, yeah, the Dark Knight Rises, the MTV footage was pretty awesome, too. So have a good show, guys. Bye.
You know, he mentioned Dark Knight Rises. One of the things that was mentioned, and I don't know your name, and I apologize for that. When anybody calls up, please let us know your name, because I love to put that with the voicemails. I like to put down who you are when we do that. So, but I mean, thank you for the great call. He mentioned Dark Knight Rises, and I am so excited. I agree with him so much on these trailers. Have you been following the trailers for Dark Knight Rises?
Yeah, I've been checking those things out. I'm pumped. I'm really looking forward to this. There is a level of nervousness, but there is this. You know what? All the ones before this have been really good. I gotta have faith in the creative team behind it, and let's let it happen, man.
You know, it's we've got Superman versus the Elite coming out, the direct-to-DVD release, and then we've got Dark Knight Rises. A lot of people were asking me, you know, are you guys going to do an Avengers episode? And it's really one of those deals. First of all, you haven't seen Avengers,
right?
And second of all, I think it's really important for our show to make sure we hit all of the DC media releases. I think with us constantly trying to keep up with as much DC content, I think when people come and listen to Raging Bullets, you're looking for, like, hey, you know, what are these guys talking about with what's DC's currently doing right now? I think there's a lot of great podcasts out there that are doing Avengers content and talking about that film. It's why we didn't do it. I loved the film. I've mentioned it multiple times on the show. I think it's one of the greatest superhero movies out of the batch. I thought the build to it was great with all the other films that led into it. I think what Marvel's doing is extremely right there. So it's one of the reasons why I think our show, we're a niche show. We're kind of a DC fanzine show. And I think it's kind of important that to make sure we stay current with DC stuff, because people are looking for that and that content when people go for our back catalog, as I mentioned in previous calls, that we get to that. But he mentioned Dark Knight Rises, and we are definitely going to be doing an in-depth episode immediately following the release of that film. I'm ready to talk about it now. I mean, if we could see it right now, I would. I mean, these trailers are outstanding. I mean, they're doing Nightfall in a way that I just think is going to be absolutely brilliant. Because I'm getting the idea that Bruce has been, at least from the trailers, Bruce has been out of action as Batman for a while. Bane coming to town is going to bring him back into action, and that's why he's not up on his game. That's what's going to let Bane have the opportunity to overtake him. At least these are assumptions that I'm making from art interviews that I've read and from the trailers there. So that looks like the premise of this. And just everything I've seen from the footage, from what looks like it's going to be the breaking. You know, there's this one part in the trailer where he's holding like this shattered mask. I love that these trailers are revealing just enough without the specifics. Like, I don't want to see how he's broken. I want to see that come on the big screen. But I love knowing that this is what's going to happen with him. I love that we don't know how he's going to be brought back. But there's some implication that Ra's al Ghul and Talia might be a part of this whole thing. Is it going to be a Lazarus pit? I don't know. Because you see something that looks like a pit.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's what it's going to be or not. You know, and when does that take place chronologically in the film? We don't know. So these are things that I'm loving speculating and trying to figure out what's going on, but I love that I don't know. Like, I know things that I'm assuming, but I just don't know enough. So this film looks like it's really going to be special and spectacular, and that's something that I'm looking forward to. Where are you at with Man of Steel?
Oh, I'm pumped. I'm excited about the Superman, you know, and just, you know, it's, again, one of those things where I don't know exactly what I'm going to get out of it, but, you know, I think it's got a strong enough, you know, cast of character. Well, the acting staff, I'm thinking we got some names, we got some people who I've seen in enough stuff that I'm like, you know what? They take their craft seriously. This isn't just going to be some, movie to them. They actually, they get really into the characters and they become those characters. So, like, I don't know. I'm looking forward to it.
I like that Zack Snyder's mentioned that it's not going to be tied to the previous films.
Yeah.
It's going to be its own entity. I think that's important. Now, I'm a huge fan of the previous films. It's just that I think, if you want to make this for a new generation, you really need to kind of leave that where it was, leave it to set on its own. It's kind of like, I look at the Burton Batman film as a great example of that. I thought that 89 Batman film was phenomenal. Last summer, they did a summer series at the State Theater here, where you could go and see the movie on the big screen at the State Theater. It still holds up and looks brilliant. But that was a time, and I think Batman Begins is the type of film it's now. That's the Batman now. And I think we need a Superman Now film. And I'm hoping Man of Steel winds up being that Superman Now film. Just as special in its own right as the Donner stuff in the past. And I'm looking very, very forward to seeing how that all comes about, what it looks like. And I'm with you. I'm excited for that. I hope it's a home run because, I think the superhero films that are coming out have been terrific. We've got an upcoming phone call that's going to be somebody talking about how they got into comics from a superhero film. And I think that's great. I think it's that these films are launching points to keep, not only for us, but to keep films keep these characters in our pop culture. And I don't know, I just think that's something that's interesting. So, cool, good stuff. And you mentioned meeting Dean Cain. You and I are both Lois and Clark fans, huge Lois and Clark fans. I thought he was a great Superman on that show. I was a big fan of Lois and Clark when it was on television. I've since watched it again because they did the DVD releases of it. And there's a show that I think holds up. I still enjoy it for the show that it was. I thought Terry Hatcher was brilliant as Lois Lane. I thought Lane Smith as Perry White was terrific. I thought it was and Ma and Pa Kent were amazing.
Come on, those are classics. And Terry Hatcher was my Lois Lane for the longest time until until Smallville came around. She was my number one Lois Lane character because she had what I enjoyed about the character. I thought that was a really cool, that was a person I could see actually Superman falling for, and could be Superman's great love, and it fit and it made sense. And it wasn't until recent Smallville that she got knocked off the number one spot.
He was mentioning his enjoyment of going to conventions and of meeting people who are in cosplay and meeting celebrities and just really kind of enjoying that whole experience. He got me, I'm so jonesing because this year, because of the fact that I'm going to be in a wedding in California, I really had to go light on conventions this year. I am so stoked. We're doing New York Comic Con, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so into New York Comic Con. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure we have a table and a spot because I feel like this year I've been so out of the loop with the whole convention scene. I've done conventions, but they were more local conventions, which have been terrific. But his comments about Wizard World Philly just has me jonesing to do something big again. So we're definitely going to do the best to be a part of New York Comic Con when it hits and to do that again because I don't know about you. I'm jonesing for a table.
Yes, actually, so am I. I kind of, the last couple big cons, New York and then Chicago, I wasn't at a table, and I was able to run into some people, but I know there was a lot more there that I never got to see or talk to, and I was like, that would have been kind of neat, and I did miss having a table. I did miss that, because there was a couple times in Chicago I was sitting with pants and just talking and hanging out, and I was like, this is kind of nice. I kind of like this.
I love when you say you're sitting with pants. I'm like, yeah, we won't let you in the con without pants. Brian Crispin from Comic Geek Speak is actually one of those guys that I really enjoy running into at conventions. That's one of the things I miss, too. I miss running into listeners, obviously creators, podcasters, and I miss the sitting at the table and talking with people about comics. circulating and going to the panels and, all the stuff that he's mentioning that he loved. I love seeing the cosplayers and, I don't know, just everything that's so interesting about going to conventions. I think it's just, you feel at home, with a crowd of people that have similar interests to you, where you can just kind of just embrace that kind of geek culture that we all know and love. So if you haven't been to a convention and you're listening to this, do yourself a favor and hit one, because it's an amazing experience. It really, really is. It's a great way to get to know comics that are coming out, to get in touch with creators, and creators love interacting with their audience. And they also love, too, it's a great way to talk to creators about like books maybe you're interested in that you haven't read. Don't be afraid to walk up to a creator and say, hey, I'm going to be honest, I haven't read your material. Can you tell me a little bit about it? Because it's a great opportunity to maybe try to read something new that you haven't read before. And the creators will love that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure there's a lot of creators who wish more people would approach them about a title they're not reading, because I do think that's part of what creators go to conventions for. I think they go to conventions to get in contact with their fans that are embracing and enjoying their work already, but also it's an opportunity to reach a new fan that maybe has never read their work before. And, they love to say, hey, this is something that I'm very proud of that, I think you should read, and here's why. That's something you shouldn't be afraid to do at a convention either, because I don't think that's insulting. I think that's, I think there's really nice ways to walk up and say, hey, I've never read anything yours before, but I'm interested. Can you tell me a little bit? And I think a creator would be very interested in contacting and connecting with that new reader as well. So I don't know. Conventions are awesome, and I'm jonesing. We're definitely, we can say right now we're going to be at New York Comic Con.
Yes.
On some level, and I'll let people know if we're able to get a table and work that out. I'll certainly update on the show.
Hi there, Sean and Jim. It's Martin here from the UK. Just to call in and say how much I'm loving your podcast. I'm actually quite new to comics. I've only been reading them since the Green Lantern film last year, which I absolutely loved. I started off reading some Green Lantern trades, starting at Rebirth, and have taken the opportunity to read some new comics since the New 52. Absolutely loving those. I've been reading the Green Lantern books, obviously, which have been amazing. I've also read Batgirl, which I think has been absolutely great. I'm loving the inner dialogue and everything like that. Also been reading Justice League, Green Arrow, Earth 2, and World's Finest, which I'm absolutely loving. Especially Justice League. I'm loving the interaction between the different characters. I'm just reading them basically because I'm about to extend my budget for the two comics. I was hoping to get you guys advice on some new books. First question I have really is the Batman books. How does that work? There seems to be 4 different Batman books. I was wondering, do they all have the same story, or are the 4 different books playing different stories with the same character? If they are different stories, which of the Batman books would you recommend? And then secondly, I'd like to choose between Nightwing, Birds of Prey, Red Hood and the Outlaws, or the Flash series. I can only afford one of them, unfortunately, so I was hoping to get you guys' advice on which book to pick up. And then finally, I'd like to give a quick shout-out to the podcast of which is from the people over at the blog of these are the guys that actually put me on to your great podcast, and I'd like to give them a big shout-out for any Green Lantern fans, because I think they're a good blog as well, and a good podcast. Okay, thanks a lot again. Really loving your podcast. Love the enthusiasm that you guys have for it. It's very infectious. Okay, thanks a lot, and looking forward to your reply.
The podcast and blog of O are very good friends of our show, so please shout out them anytime you'd like to. Actually, in general, if there's ever something you want to shout out that you're enjoying across comics, I look at this show and our Facebook group and Google Plus and all that stuff as being a community aspect. So if you've got a blog that you're enjoying, if you run a blog, if you run a podcast or anything, please feel free to use that. So many people shout us out. This is a great example of look what Podcast of O has done for us. So, I mean, I really believe and I love that open, connective energy between podcasts and blogs and just everybody who's in the comic fandom shouting each other out, because we rely on that. None of us have advertising budgets, so it's great that, we all help each other out like this. So thank you very much for shouting that out, and that was your gateway into that, because I love hearing that, because I'm a big believer that when we do these shout outs for each other, we're not losing listeners, we're gaining listeners by we help each other. One hand washes the other, and we're pointing people to podcasts they will enjoy. For any listeners that we lose, we were going to lose them anyway because we aren't the show for them. You know, that's just one of those things. But maybe by pointing them to somebody else and them pointing people to us, we end up all gaining listeners that were really looking for our shows from the get-go. And I think it's great to point each other to the right podcast. So thank you very much to our friends at the Podcast of Oa and Martin for shouting them out, because those guys are just great, great friends of our show. And I think that's really, really cool. As far as the Batman books, let's talk about those specifically. We've got Batman Detective Comics, Batman and Robin, and Batman the Dark Knight. Batman the Dark Knight, I know, has a new writer coming on board, so it's kind of hard to speak on that right now. But if you had to pick which ones would you recommend? For me, I'll say right now, I would start with Batman. Batman, to me, is the flagship title, for me, of the Batman books. After that, I would probably go with Batman and Robin, because you get to see the relationship between Bruce and his son. Then I would go Detective and Batman the Dark Knight. If I was going in order as far as, like, prioritizing which ones I'd pick up, that's my list. I'm loving all four of them. I'm a Batman junkie. I think they're all four great books, but I don't know if Martin's looking to jump onto one. And if he's looking to jump onto one, my number one would be Batman. Then Batman and Robin would be a second if he's looking to grab two. What's your list?
Well, there's also Batman Inc.
Thank you so much, because that just, I guess I've been thinking of the main core titles. Well, that changes everything. This might shock.
Another great.
Yeah,
I say it's another great Bruce Damian relationship, but It also does expand out the universe, because there's all the other the international Batman that he's going to be dealing with in that title.
You know what? Let me fix my list then, because you're right. I did leave out Batman Inc. This might shock you there, though. I'd still go with Batman being my number one. I would still go with Batman and Robin being my number two there. I think what Tomasi and Gleason have been doing there, I think, has been absolutely fantastic. I would put Batman Inc. 3, and that's not an insult to Batman Inc. It's a compliment to the other two books and how great they are. Batman Inc.'s just as great. And then I would go with the other Detective and then Batman the Dark Knight after that. I wouldn't drop any of those books, but that's my order as far as if I was recommending to somebody who only has a limited budget and they want to pick up one or two or three of the Batman books. My top three would be Batman, Batman and Robin, and then Batman Inc. in there. And that's, again, that's not an insult at all to Batman Inc. I'm adoring Batman Inc. I think it's fantastic. It's just, I think Batman by Snyder has just been knocking my socks off. The work of Batman and Robin, every time I read an issue of Batman and Robin, I'm floored by it. I think the interpersonal relationships that are being developed there, I think, are just stellar. I think Tomasi and Gleason, I guess for me it's a sleeper Batman hit, because I feel like I keep forgetting about that book. And then when I read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this book is awesome. So I guess that's why I'm putting it there. So what is your list?
Well, with the Bat titles, you really, aside from the current Court of Owls and the whole Night of Owls story, they do keep separate. So if he only has to pick one, he can pretty much focus on one title, and it'll be a pretty good, solid Batman story. And keeping that in mind, it's the question of, like for me, I love Damian, so I kind of lean towards the Batman and Robin because of that great relationship. But if you want a good solid Bruce Wayne, good solid Batman story, I would lean and think towards the Batman and then the Detective Comics, because those are some really good solid Bruce Wayne Batman stories. If you like the Bat universe, if you like the overall Bat family, that's when you can start looking at some of the other titles. So it's, for me personally, it's Batman and Robin, because I do love that Bruce and Damian relationship. But I echo your sentiments on the Batman title itself. That has been just an outstanding, just the stellar series that if you're like, I'm really a Batman Bruce Wayne fan, I'd say go with Batman.
I've been enjoying Batman the Dark Knight. I'm very curious to see what it's going to be like with the new writer. That's one I always throw at the end of my list. It's on my list, though, as being a title I'm just really digging. But it's been a book that I've loved. I think the artwork's great. I think the writers that have been working on it have done a great job with it. It just that's where it winds up on my Batman book list. But I think it's a great time to be a Batman fan, because these books aren't interconnected, except for like the Night of Owls crossover. We had the other titles doing their own stories in that Night of Owls crossover. But they were independent in their own way as well. So you didn't need to be reading every single title in order to participate in that. So I hope those recommendations help you. And I had a feeling you were going to go with Batman and Robin as your number one because of how much I agree with your Joy of Damien. I think he's terrific. And I think Batman and Robin is I do think it's the go-to title if you want to see Damien. I think it's handled so well there. And you got to shout out Grant Morrison for creating that character. So he's a terrific character.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, as for those other, which one would you pick? Between it was Flash, Nightwing, Birds of Prey, or Red Hood and the Outlaws. This is a tough one for me to say because I love Jason Todd, I love Red Hood, and I love the characterization that we're now seeing in Red Hood and the Outlaws. But I'm going to go with Nightwing because Dick Grayson is awesome. And that's a great story and a beautiful book. It's a wonderful combo of creative teams working together. That's another solid Bat story that, I'm putting that over. And I'm really getting into Birds of Prey now, and we're about to talk about Flash. Flash has been really solid stories. So, for me really to say, I'm very definitive saying that of those four, that's the one I would go with because I do enjoy that we're getting a really great adventure story involving Dick Grayson, and we're exploring some of his past, looking towards the future, and a lot of the different cons they've talked about the direction that Nightwing is going to go, and you're going to really see the Prince of Gotham. You're going to really see that he is a different type of Gotham superhero than Bruce is, and you're going to see probably I'm imagining more of stepping into the light and the spotlight and just the the bright shine of the hope of Gotham, and it's as opposed to Bruce in the shadows doing his Dark Knight thing. You have this is going to be the Gotham hero that kind of shines.
It's going to be interesting because I guess there's been a lot of stuff in interviews. There's going to be a new direction for Nightwing. When I say a new direction, it's one that's organically coming out of Night of the Owls. And the fact that he's now found out that he's the Gray Son, where his name comes from, he is going to be back in Gotham. And he's going to have a major role in Gotham in what he's doing moving forward. I'm excited for what Higgins is going to do. Echoing what you're saying, it's funny how I want to give him real good recommendations. First of all, I want to say, before I give you my list, he mentioned he was reading Batgirl. If you're a Batgirl fan and you're really digging that book, Birds of Prey has Batgirl in it, and she's part of that team. I'm really enjoying Birds of Prey right now. So if you're digging Batgirl and you're like, well, I'd love more of a Batgirl fix, Birds of Prey might be something you want to try out to see if that, kind of gives you Barbara on a team book, too. So that might be a way for you to help make your decision there. If I was going to go through my order of those books, 4 great titles that I'm really, really enjoying, I would have trouble cutting any of those 4 from my list right now. But putting them in order, and I'm going to be fair on this one, because I almost want to put Nightwing and Flash as a tie, because I'm really enjoying the Flash. And we're going to be talking about the Flash in our next segment. So there's going to be a great chance for you to hear our thoughts on The Flash, how we feel about that book and its art styling. So maybe that'll help you make a decision on if The Flash is the right book for you. But I would put them in order. I would give a slight edge to Nightwing because I'm such a Bat family junkie. Dick Grayson in general. I've been a Dick Grayson fan since I was a little kid. Loved seeing him on Teen Titans when Wolfman and Perez were working with that character. I loved the teen Dick Grayson coming back and visiting Bruce in Gotham. I'm a Dick Grayson junkie. Kyle Higgins, I think, just so totally has really embraced who Dick Grayson is as a character. I love his relationship with Scott Snyder as far as how they really make Dick Grayson's relationship with Bruce something that at times the books will interact with each other in a way that makes sense, being the main Batman title and Nightwing. In a way that makes sense. You don't have to be reading both of them, but I love that there's this feeling of energy between Bruce and Dick Grayson that I think is just fantastic. I love that acknowledgement of that relationship. But to me, you talked about the adventurous spirit, that he's the light of Gotham kind of spirit with Dick Grayson, the accessibility of Dick Grayson. And a lot of your comments about Dick Grayson are exactly who I see Dick Grayson as being, and I think this book just has so captured it. Eddie Barrow's artwork on this, I think, has just been a nonstop home run. I think the whole creative team is just gelled together. I just love the look of the book. The interiors are really, really sharp. The use of Dick Grayson's acrobatic skills, the action sequences, I think really look unique to Nightwing and to the same character that was at one point in time Batman when he filled in for Bruce. And I love that the book acknowledges the fact that he was that too. And this feels like a more mature Dick Grayson. So Nightwing would be my number 1 pick. Number 2, we're going to talk about The Flash. Very close number 2. I have a lot of trouble not cheating here and saying that it's a tie between Nightwing and The Flash because I feel that strongly about The Flash as a book. Number 3 on that. Wow. Between Red Hood and the Outlaws and Birds of Prey. I'm having a real tough time making a decision between those two. I guess I would give a slight edge to Birds of Prey. I guess. Except that Red Hood and the Outlaws I think has gotten so good. I guess a slight edge to Birds of Prey, and then because I love Dinah Lance and I love the handling. I think the current writer on Birds of Prey really has taking a book that, to me, that's Gail Simone's book. It's funny how Chuck Dixon started. I loved what Chuck Dixon did with it. When Gail Simone came on it just knocked my socks off. This writer right now has done a really good job of not trying to be Gail Simone light and crafting a Birds of Prey story that I think is really working. I'm really enjoying. And at the same time, understanding who Barbara Gordon is, who Batgirl currently is. And I don't feel like this is a foreign alien Batgirl. You know, I feel like this writer really has taken time to pay attention to what Gail Simone's doing over there. I think this book just really works, and I'm really enjoying Birds of Prey. I love the Squad. I love Katana. I love Poison Ivy. I love Starling. It's just, and I'm rattling off this team without even looking to see who's on the team because these are characters I'm invested in now. And Dinah Lance, obviously, Black Canary, and Batgirl. I just think it's a great team. I loved when Batgirl came on board. I think that just added something to the book that I really wanted to see anyway. And I don't know, it's just Birds of Prey is something I'm enjoying. Red Hood and the Outlaws, we've talked about it quite recently on the podcast, so you can hear it was during the Night of the Owls crossover, and it's a book that really has risen up my stack of enjoyment as well. But I would put them in order. That would be the order I would put the 4 in. I would start with Nightwing. But you know, Flash might be the one, if you're looking for something a little outside of the Bat universe to kind of flesh something out in your library, Flash would be the one I would go with then. So, I don't know. It's a good question and a very interesting question. And I want to thank again the podcast of OA for shouting us out and Martin for pointing that out. I think that's really great. And Martin, thanks for calling.
Hey, Sean. Hey, Jim. It's Jim from far northern New Hampshire. Just touching base with you this week on a couple of things. Number one, I wanted to just give a quick, I got it right there with you guys, and that's Earth 2. Fantastic book. And really, James Robinson, we really shouldn't expect anything else from him. And the reason I think that Earth 2 feels so good, so right, is that Robinson really did his vision of a rebirth of a classic Golden Age character when he did Starman. And when I had lapsed from comics many years ago and I came back into the field, and I went to a comic book store and I said, what would you recommend for somebody who hasn't been reading comics for a while to get back into it? And the very first thing they recommended was Starman. And I was hooked on day one. I bought the first trade, and from there on out, I just, kept buying the trades, and then I decided, well, you know what, I want the floppies, and then being the completest nut that I am, I went with getting the deluxe omnibuses. So what a fantastic reader Earth 2 is. Again, because I have the opportunity during the day to do a little web surfing at work, one of the websites out there kind of in a tirade, or hopefully in a mock tirade, said that they were angry that Earth 2 kind of pulled a bait and switch, that they, got you all pumped up to learn about the Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman of Earth 2, and by the end of the first issue, they were gone. And I don't have a problem with the fact that Robinson did that. I think, if anything, it is by far going to make it more of an interesting Earth. When you lose the big three, when you lose, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the three founding superheroes, the Trinity, where do you go from there? And I can't imagine what Robinson's going to do with this. It will be interesting to see if somewhere along the line we get a Starman on that world, because I think that the Starman that was in his run would fit perfectly on Earth too, and that's the kind of stuff that I'm really looking forward to. I'm so pumped by that, as I am by World's Finest. What a great concept. It's going to be interesting to find out how or why they showed up on Earth 1, why Karen and Helena were transposed, and who's behind that. I think it's just going to be a fun read, and more than anything else, a comic book's got to be fun. I mean, yeah, it can deal with weighty issues, and it can be whatever else it wants to be, but if after you put down a book and all you feel is exhausted, then there's a problem. And my take is that it's fine every now and then for a series to put out a book that exhausts you, but my workaday world is exhausting enough. I don't need to, go through 32 pages of another workout. So, but that's my pluses right there. Earth 2 and World's Finest, incredibly good reads. Cannot wait. Batman Inc. relaunches this week, and that should be fun as well. So now on to a piece of news that I guess broke over the weekend, and I don't know if you guys are going to talk about it, but I want to, and hopefully it'll fit in with your discussion. And that's the announcement that came from one of the cons over in England, where Dan, and I always screw up Dan's last name, is it Didio, where Dan announced that a newly rebirthed hero, and actually the term iconic hero, was going to be reintroduced into the pages of 52 and was going to be a gay character. And first of all, there was some clarification that came out later, which is that this is a hero we haven't seen yet. So any character that has already appeared in the new 52 is not going to be that character. That's okay. My concern is that we're going to create a character or take a classic character and make them gay for gay's sake. And that's not, I don't think anybody wants that. I know there was a lot of uproar when Batwoman first came out, and thankfully that was handled so wonderfully. But whenever comic book companies or any company comes out with something like this in an attempt to pique interest or shock or whatever, it cheapens what they're doing. Marvel apparently today unveiled on The View, which is a show that I avoid like the plague. But apparently they revealed on The View today that one of their long-standing characters, who's been gay since his first appearance, Northstar, is going to marry his boyfriend. You know what? That's fine. Have no problem with it. Don't understand why it needs to be on The View. These are things that we as a culture have to learn to accept. And every time we cheapen it by making it into a headline, it rubs me the wrong way. And I want a character that's well-rounded. I don't want a character that exists for the sake of just being some cheap one-shot whatever, whether it be a gay character or a Hispanic character or a African American character or a Latino American, a Latin American character. I don't want a character that represents a demographic. I want a character that represents something that I want to read. And if all we're doing is creating a character for the sake of the shock value, then I will say that I'm disappointed. And I hope that this is handled as wonderfully as Batwoman was. Otherwise than that, I won't bother. And the betting Olympics have begun as to who the character is going to be. Apparently the odds-on favorite now is that it's going to be, and spoiler alert for anybody who doesn't want to hear this, turn your radio or not your radio, but your iPod down, that it's going to be Alan Scott of Earth 2. again, I have no problem with that. I would have some other issues if they suddenly decided that they were going to take, a character whose identity was so wrapped around, their sexuality and just turned it into the only reason for the character's existence. And I'm afraid that in the past that's happened. So I'm all in favor of a, gay character. If it's handled properly, it isn't insulting to the gay community. Any more than I am in favor of, heterosexual characters that are insulting to the heterosexual community. Unfortunately, every demographic in our society has somebody that we can all hang our heads going, I really wish they weren't part of my culture, my demographic, whatever. But I don't want them to create a character for the sake of creating a character. So that's on, that's coming up. Understanding that it will be in the first week of June that this is revealed, which is also interesting because June 6th is the date for Earth 2. So we're going to have to hang in there and see what's going on. But again, just wanted to get my 2 cents in on that. And I hope that whatever they do, it makes sense and it provides good storytelling. Thank you much, guys. As always, Raging Bullets is the best. And talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Like I said earlier, we're going to talk about Earth 2 number 2 next week, so we'll talk a little bit about this, but I think we'll do a lot more in-depth discussion when we actually can have the material in front of us to see how we feel about the introduction of this. And here's the funny thing, I think even with Earth 2 number 2, when we first see the initial reveal, because it is Alan Scott, I mean, we know that now, that's been set in stone. I want to see what it's like in the story, how it's going to go, and I think that's something, the initial issue when we initially see that isn't going to be enough to let us know how we really feel about it. I think it's going to have to be seeing how it's used. And I don't see Robinson's not a writer for me that is going to do gay for gay. He's going to do it because this is interesting to do with this character. It's funny how for some reason, I'm more attached to Jay Garrick being married than I am Alan Scott, because I think so much of Alan Scott's storytelling has been that he was a dad of Jade and Obsidian, but we don't have a lot of exposure in recent years to him with his wife, whereas Jay, we do. So, I want to see Jay eventually get it together. We got to see the woman Joan, who would be his wife in the beginning. Now, I don't know whether those two are going to wind up together or not as Jay progresses moving forward, but I'm very interested in seeing the Jay and Joan relationship and seeing if that is something we eventually do get out of Earth 2. Alan Scott, for some reason, when I heard that announcement, I'm with him. I wasn't like, oh my God, this is terrible. How could you do this? I was more intrigued. I think knowing that it was James Robinson and his love for Alan Scott is something where I'm comforted by that, because it's a writer who loves the character. So I don't see him doing that unless he has a way of doing it while still keeping it feeling very much like tried and true Alan Scott. So I think that's something for me. How do you feel about that, though? What are your thoughts? Is that something that's... Do you think it's an interesting direction? Batwoman, I think, is something I nod to, is going, yeah, they get kind of how to do it where the character happens to be gay, but that's not their whole identity. They're a person just like any other superhero character. Like Bruce Wayne's a heterosexual, but that's not constantly thrown in our face either.
Right. Yeah, he's not gay man. He's the Green Lantern, and he happens to be gay. And I was okay with when they made the announcement. When they did the initial teaser, I was like, oh, okay, kind of curious to see who it is. And then when they announced who it was, I was like, oh, okay. And to be honest, I couldn't remember the name of his wife from the previous stuff, so I didn't even know. I knew he had 2 kids, and I assumed he had a wife, who was the other half of the children, but I couldn't remember the name. So for him to be gay, it's not a huge traumatic experience for me. And I'm kind of glad. I kind of like when they do stuff like this, when they do change, either characters' ethnicity or when they change, their sexual orientation, because these characters were created so long ago that, we have one basic character mold, and modern days it's not just one way. There's multiple options out there for people, and part of society is dealing with different characters of different, orientations, different races, different sexes, different, makeups, and just, character. If you want to have a universe that's realistic, if you want to have a universe that's a reflection of modern times, you have to go outside the traditional molds that we've had for all these years. And I'm kind of glad they're doing this. I'm kind of excited to see it, and it should give us some really interesting stories. And it's this, especially when you look at the creative team behind him. This is a talented creative team, so you're giving the talented creative team something really cool to work with. Let's see what happens. It's I think this is a definite win for us as fans who want a story, who want something different. And as you said, I can't see James Robinson just throwing it out there, shock, gay to be gay. Let's go for shock, shock and awe. No, it's not his style. This is the character, and he's going to explore it and develop it, and, we'll get some, closeness and a connection to him.
I know he loves Alan Scott as a character, so I see him being very protective of the character and the character concept. So I think it's going to be an interesting choice. I agree with some of the comments that Jim was saying as far as, and I mean other Jim, not you, as far as you don't want to just do this for the sake of doing it. I'm a believer, there's got to be a story reason. Where's your story direction going with the character? If you're going to do it, make it something where you're like, we're going to start defining this character not just by their sexual orientation as a hero, and we're fleshing out a three-dimensional character that has all facets with them as well. That's what Batwoman is. That's why it works for Batwoman. She's not a gay woman like you mentioned earlier. She's Batwoman, who happens to be gay. And it's cool when it shows up in the story because you're developing relationships and interpersonal relationships that feel natural for the character, not forced, if that makes sense. So if they're going to do this with Alan Scott, I want it to feel natural, not forced. That's all I want. So if it's natural, yeah, it's cool. I haven't got a problem with it. I think it's neat. It's something different. It's a cool way to explore. And it's a character that's being totally reimagined on a new Earth. The bait and switch thing. Let's go back to that because people are getting mad. I haven't seen a whole lot of that, but see, to me, this goes back to the original Earth 2 concept. As a kid, when I grew up, Superman and Batman Superman was retired, Batman was dead on Earth 2. So, and Wonder Woman, I think, was retired. I'm trying to remember. But the Trinity was out of the game in the crossovers between Earth 1 and Earth 2. Traditionally, when I grew up in the Justice Society crossovers that they did. They did this yearly crossover. So it was Alan Scott, it was Jay Garrick. That's how we got to know those. Jay Garrick was the first one that crossed over. He and Barry Allen met each other. It was these characters. So this isn't something that they've done new as some bait and switch thing. It's going back to the core of kind of what Earth 2 was. They reimagined the way that Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman are out of the game. And I think they're using that gap as we need heroes and making, a world where they were the Trinity and maybe they can be an inspiration for this new generation. I don't know. We're going to see what's going to happen. But I'm very interested to see the direction they're going in. I didn't at all take it as a bait and switch. I took it more as going to the core of what Earth 2 was. It is a world that's moved on from the Trinity. And that's left a gap for these new heroes to step up and take their place. And that's where we're going to get the Justice Society. I always assumed that Earth 2 was going to be the Justice Society book. Is that what you assumed from that book?
Yeah, I kind of thought that's what they were going to go with. And then when we have the teaser covers where they show Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman on, I'm like, what? What's going on here? And that was, as we said, when we first started talking, I'm like, are they keeping these guys around? And then, when the first one dies, you're like, oh, okay, they're all going to die. Okay. And they're going back to just the core of an Earth without those three, and these are the heroes that come from it. So, yeah, I didn't see a bait and switch when I read it and when we talked about it. I'm in a weird way kind of comforted that Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman aren't going to be the focal spotlight of that book, because in my eyes, I want to see the Justice Society characters. I want to see them spotlighted. I want to get to know them. I've got I've got multiple Superman books, multiple Batman books. I'm reading Wonder Woman. I'm enjoying all those books. Well, I love Elseworlds, and I love the idea of seeing them, and I would love if they do spotlight issues showing
you know, like an annual or something like that, where it's really focused on the history of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman on this world, I want to read that stuff, so I'm into that. But I really want this book to be focused on the Justice Society characters. I want to see these characters, especially Mr. Terrific. I enjoyed his book. I know he's going to be in that book. You know, I want to see this team. I want to see the Atom. You know, we haven't seen him. We saw a brief introduction to him, but I want to see where they're going with, you know, the Earth 2 version of the Atom. And, you know, a lot of these characters, they're the ones I really want to see focused on and spotlighted. So I'm excited for that. He mentioned exhausting. Books that are exhausting. I always look at that. If you get to the point where maybe one issue, like he said, you know, maybe there's one issue that makes you feel that way. But I'm totally with him on that. If you're reading a book that's exhausting, it's my attitude. That's time for a switch. Like, read something else. There's so many comics on the shelf. Sticking with a book that's exhausting you, if you're that bitter and angry about a comic you're reading, you gotta switch. Because you're missing the point. He's right. I work all day long. Last thing I want to do is come home and get beat up by my comic. And I don't. I really genuinely don't. You know, and it's a theme. You don't either. I mean, have you ever, like, let's be honest. I mean, and feel free to say that. Has there been a comic that you've read, and how do you deal with that, where you've been afterwards kind of like, this was just a experience, and how do you deal with that?
Well, I've had a couple of the meaty tomes that we've read, that we reviewed for the show, and that were, I was like, okay, this is an adventure. This is diving in, and you know, that's because of just the meatiness of what we're reading. But just the everyday, the weekly reads, the books. I'm trying to remember. I don't think I really had any where I was like, okay, let's get through this. I'm sitting here, I read it, and I think the worst I've ever had was I was like, oh, okay, that's good. And I don't think about it again. And it's just, it's a one-time read, and I'm not going to want to read it again. I think that's probably the worst I've ever been with a title. I've never had any exhaustion. I've never had any, oh, God, I can't do this. I don't think I've had that experience.
See, I'd have no hesitation if I had a book that was doing that for me right now. For example, just out of the New 52, I would have no hesitation of podcasting and saying, this is a book right now, it's just beating me up, and I'm just going to step away from it for a while. And then we revisit it later. What I would do, I had responsibility and I figured that would be interesting for our listeners to say, honestly, this is a title that I dropped. I'm going to try it again to see if maybe it clicks with me now. I think that'd be interesting commentary for people. So I would utilize that. And just say, but I would not for this show, even. Taking me out as just a straight comic fan. As a podcaster, I wouldn't for this show keep reading something that was doing that to me. Because I think our listeners would find it interesting to say, well, Sean dropped this title because it was beating him up like that. So I think that would be interesting commentary in of itself. But there's nothing that is doing that to me. I couldn't imagine continuing to read something like that. It would make me hate comics.
You actually, you know what? There was a title that I did drop because of that, and it was that Legion title.
Which one?
The L.E.G.I. That one.
Oh yeah, I didn't know you dropped that.
Yeah, remember that was the one where.
Yeah, and then you picked it up later and loved it.
Yeah.
Oh, that wasn't that. Was that Rebels, or was it Legion?
Rebels, not Rebels. Legion. Thank you. Yeah.
Because when you were saying L.E. I'm like, what is he talking about? No, yeah. Rebels.
But then Rebels, you came. Not Legion.
There was a Tony Bedard book.
Yeah. That was something that I just really couldn't get into it. I couldn't get it going, and then that annual came out, and you're like, you got to read it. You got to read it. And I read it, and I'm like, okay, I'm back in. And then I went back and I picked up the title, the issues that I didn't get. Because I have to have a complete run, but also because I figured I'd give it another read through and give it another go. And up until through that, from that point on, I was all in on Rebels.
Yeah, that was, and see, that's
so there's a title that I had. I was struggling through the issues, and that's when I'm like, I got to drop it.
Yeah, see, that's a great example, and I loved that. I mean, I thought that was a great series of episodes that we did where we had commentary talking about how you dropped it and why, and did you get back into it? Because I was having a different experience with that book than you were. So, I mean, I would, if I had that experience, I would gladly talk about that on the show because I think that would be interesting. It's even more interesting if you were having a different experience with it. So, I don't know. The whole exhausting thing, I would say this to anybody listening. If you're reading a book that's doing that to you, Not for one issue, for multiple issues. If it's a title you were like previously enjoying, and you're like, wow, I'm three issues in a row. I'm just kind of beat up by this book. Oh my gosh, previews is like a phone book. Find something else. There's great comics out there. This to me is an escape. It's something that, unless you're a professional reviewer that has to read every single issue of it, you need to switch and get something that's exciting. Yeah, North Star, I don't think he was always gay. I don't think it was defined. Because I kind of remember when he was North Star over at Marvel. I was an Alpha Flight fan when it initially came out, and I don't remember him being defined as gay initially. But I do think that was something that he came out later in the X-Men. I think it was when he was on the X-Men team, maybe, that he came out. Do you remember any of that?
Vaguely.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember that. And
I don't remember that. That never bothered me. I thought that it kind of fit the character and everything. I thought it was kind of cool and interesting to kind of explore that route too. And one of the things I loved about it was that was another, boy, talk about a nice trendy way to handle that. Marvel did that very well, and the creators involved. I'm sorry, I don't remember the writer that did that at the time, but I do remember thinking to myself, what I liked about it was they announced it, but it didn't change the character. Like, he was still North Star. I love that it doesn't all of a sudden make the guy. He doesn't have to act differently now. He doesn't have to do anything differently now. He happens to be gay. I mean, and he's still, just as normal as everybody else. That just happens to be his sexual preference, or, and I don't know. I don't have a problem with that. I think that fits a more modern society. This is true. This is what, our society is. People are different, and they've got different preferences, and they come from different backgrounds and things. I think when it's done in a storytelling way where you don't overdo it, you don't do it in a way that's, this is the way I should say it, that you don't do it in a way that's any different than the way you'd handle any other character's sexual preference, we don't spend like 6 issues dealing with that. Just so you know, Bruce Wayne's heterosexual, and we're going to really put it in your face that he's heterosexual. We know Bruce Wayne's a billionaire playboy, but, it's not every issue of Batman is about his dating life. That just happens to be a background thing that's going on. And I think they've got a really good balance of how to handle characters that are gay now, that they feel just as natural and normal as every other character. And I think that's great. I really do. I think that's I think comics are sending the message that, hey, this is our society. Just embrace it and move on. It's like not a big deal. I don't have problems with the shows like The View and things like that making mention of it. My opinion is this. Any notice to comics is good notice. So if it's the fact that a gay character is getting married in comics and people are like picking up a comic because of it, great. Maybe they'll keep reading. I don't think it matters for us as readers that it's on The View, but I'm hoping that some people picked up that issue of X-Men because of the fact that they saw it on The View. Because comics need readers, and I hope they stick around. And maybe they'll try Earth 2 because of the fact that Alan Scott's going to be gay. So, and maybe they'll realize that, wow, this is just a great read, and they'll stick around with the book. So I'm all for that. If it generates notice, I think we as fans sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, we forget that comic companies need to promote. And if it's something that is shocking that's being done in the story, I don't mind if it gets noticed because, oh my gosh, look at this crazy, shocking thing they're doing, as long as the story's good. And it's the story doesn't cheapen the experience, which is what he mentioned. I really agreed with him on that. And I think comics have gotten really good at doing these types of things where, yes, it generates a draw, it generates notice for a book, but it's not done just for the sake of shock value. It's done for good storytelling. Because I think that's how you keep people who are new and try something as readers. And to do this in the second issue of Earth 2, I think it's a good time to do it because if somebody new jumps on board, they only have to pick up one more issue to be current with that series. And I hope new readers did try Earth 2 because of it. I really do, because I just think that that's great for comics. Because I think comics are fantastic. I think it's a great medium. I think there's a lot of people that won't give it a shot. And if people give it a shot because a gay character happens to be in it, so that's cool. At least they're trying it. I'm all for that.
Hey, Sean and Jim. This is Scott from Illinois. Just wanted to call in and first of all, thank you for the show. Like Sean, I'm a high school teacher, and I got back into comics a few years back. Was a big-time DC fan back in the 80s, and I think the reboot, the New 52 really pulled me back in. But I made the jump. I went digital, and I started picking up a lot of the DC digitals and really enjoying them. I appreciate the show because of your positive outtake on a lot of these new takes on the old characters and such. And some of them were great. I'm still getting a lot of them. Some of them weren't so great, but I appreciated your positive take on them. What I wanted to talk about, though, and I'm really finding fascinating and really getting into, is the new weekly digital format that DC's getting into. I'm really enjoying these weekly digitals, and I didn't think I would. The 10 pages or so put out every week, the Arkham Unhinged, the DC Beyond, whether it's Batman, Superman, or the really incredible Justice League Beyond. That's actually my favorite Justice League title right now. And the new Smallville, which you guys talked about recently. And I'm really looking forward to the, I don't know if I'll pronounce this right, the Amikami Girls digital, the DC Women coming out on Mondays, and then the new Batman digital coming out on Thursdays. I mean, to have new content every single day of the week, a short, yes, but weekly, and I don't have to wait my month here to get it. Really looking forward to that, and I'm actually more interested in those right now than many of the monthly titles coming out. But looking forward to hearing you guys talk about those weekly digitals more and more, as that's really gotten me into DC, and I really love the weekly digitals. So keep up the good work, folks. Stay positive as you have been, as always. I really enjoyed the show. First-time caller, but long-time listener. And so thanks, Sean, Jim, for all you do. Bye.
I love the shout out to the digital. It's funny. Jim isn't reading any of the digital, which is why I'm going to do this voicemail myself, because he's not here right now, and I do think it's something I can speak to more than he can. But I can speak on his behalf. One of the things he likes is, like, for example, Smallville. Great example of something that's being delivered digitally on a weekly basis, which I'm adoring that method. But Jim's reading it in the paper version. I think there's something there for everybody. I think in this day and age with comics, it's really important for comics, if they want to reach a new audience, to experiment with different delivery methods, to experiment with different storytelling methods to reach different audiences. The digital comics aren't going to be for everybody, the digital originals. You know, there's going to be people who prefer the paper product, or there's going to be people who prefer original hardcovers, or different things like that. And I think it's really important to try and, if you're going to try and reach a larger audience, to do stuff like this. Experiment, see what sticks, see what people like, what they don't. Legends of Dark Knight was just released this week. I absolutely adored that. It's a series that I always had a great fondness for because of its creativity with the Batman concept. Not a continuity series. Don't have to worry about, even storytelling to storytelling. You don't have to worry about those interconnecting. It's just creators having fun with the Batman concept, telling creative stories. And I really enjoyed the first issue of that because it harkens back to what I always liked about the series. You can just have fun reading a fun Batman story that's outside of everything, just for the fun of reading Batman. I thought it was a cool Batman story. This new Ami Girls or Ami Comics line, and I apologize if I'm butchering it. So there's a Wonder Woman comic out that right now. It's based on the Statue series. And the first 2 issues have been out. I'm really digging that. It's the Power Girl creative team. That's awesome. Fringe had a digital series that came out that I've really enjoyed. I've been collecting them all too. And then the Arkham City stuff I can't speak highly enough of because I'm loving the game. I can't get enough of that game. I keep playing it, and they just released some download content for the game. So I'm back in and excited about playing that game again, and that's all, a digital series you mentioned as well. But I do think it's important when you do these digital releases to offer a paper version for paper fans, because I think, again, you're just catering to different audiences. I'm a hybrid fan. I like digital. I like paper. There's some series that I'm reading in digital. There's some series that I'm reading in paper. There's some things that I'm collecting in hardcover. I'm mainly outside of DC because it's stuff that, I just know I'll get to when I have extra time. And I think it's really important just to have those different delivery methods available. I think you're just catering to a whole different sort of crowd base with each one of them. And I think it's important for comics to just increase visibility and try to get them out there as far as you can. I want to see more advertising of this digital stuff that you're mentioning, because I think there's some great opportunities through that digital to reach a new audience as long as they know it's there. And that stuff's at a price point that makes sense. These 99-cent weekly releases, you're paying the same amount that you'd pay when you get, the whole paper issue put together. But there's something about getting them in the smaller delivery method that I'm really digging too. I'm with you. And I wouldn't want all my books delivered that way. I like that there's some of them that are delivered that way. Anyway, thanks for the call and thanks for the kind words. We really appreciate it.
Now I can get out of here.
Our next discussion will be on Flash number 9, stories by Francis Manifold and Brian Buccellato, with art by Francis Manifold, covers by Brian Buccellato, with letters Wes Abbott, the cover by Manifold and Buccellato, with a variant cover by Tony Daniel, Sandu Flore, and Tomei Mori. The assistant editor is Darren Shane, and the editor is Brian Cunningham.
Yeah, and just apologize in advance for any name butchery, because I would be doing the same thing. And I really love this creative team. This is one of those, we were talking earlier about books, and we tried to make a decision between like Nightwing and The Flash and all those. I really have a lot of trouble, and it's only because of, I think, growing up with Dick Grayson that it gave it a slight edge, because I think the work that Higgins is doing and the whole creative team is doing over Nightwing is brilliant, but I think The Flash is just as brilliant. I'm still very torn on that decision. And I think as we have this discussion about this book, one of the things that I love about it is the use of art and storytelling panels to convey the power, mood, and tone of the character of the Flash. This book is doing that brilliantly. I just think that this is another one, everything I said about Aquaman, I feel about the Flash. I think this is just a great relaunch for DC. A great use of the character. I think Barry Allen is just so interesting in this. De-aging him, I think, was a great idea. And making him exciting and accessible and fun. This is what my favorite Flash stories have been, this kind of stuff. This is great Flash. I love the modifications to the costume with like the kind of energy running through it and stuff. And I love that Grodd, as a kid, I had a Batman book and record set, which took place on the backside of it was Gorilla City. The first side was Sherlock Holmes. The Gorilla City episode was Batman versus Grodd. So this is a character who's from my childhood. Grodd, somebody I have like a rich history with. I love the character. And to see this stylized book just doing such a home run with Grodd and the Flash and everything. This is another one of those you mentioned earlier, how the Aquaman's handling Black Manta. I think this book did just as great a job handling Grodd.
All of the Flash rogues that they're introducing, I think, has been just a stellar introduction to them. And it's been, they're building up the Flash rogues, and the Flash rogues always were just, they were like kind of their own iconic imagery and their own iconic characters. So by redoing the Flash, they're redoing the rogues, but they're not taking away anything that was before. And it's funny because Bart was my Flash. So, my introduction to Barry was Blackest Night. That was the dealings with him, seeing him, how he handled that circumstance, how he dealt with that situation. That really was my kind of introduction to who Barry is. So to have that and then bam, flip-flop, de-aging him, introducing him as a young character, I get this sense of feeling that this character will end up being, will grow and mature into the character that I later saw. And it's kind of a neat, feeling that I don't have this lengthy history with him, but I have this comfort level with him. And as I'm reading The Flash, I'm going, yeah, this is Barry. This is the Flash. This is what I'm cool with. This is what I'm comfortable with. But I'm also getting that same type of feeling for his rogues. And it's, this has been a great way of handling the relaunch with this character.
Amen. I totally agree. And it's, again, a character that I've had a rich history with, but I feel like, wow, we really got to the core of the character. I love the way that this book has done a great job of giving us some insight into Barry's childhood and childhood memories. I love the use of color work to show the camera work and the lens into Barry's past, that kind of theme. And I love how the colors are a little bit more muted in showing Barry's past experiences with the gorilla and why that would cause a fear, because that's the title of the issue, Fear. But then it flashes to a more colorful modern day with Barry's exposure to Grodd and how Barry doesn't have his memory because of what he went through. And this puts him in a situation where He doesn't have his memory. His head's not all there, including part of his wings on his mask. But, I mean, that's kind of puts us in this playing field where he doesn't know who he is. He's being brought in as this messenger, which is buying him time. Because I think he would have been dead if that whole messenger thing hadn't happened. He would have been dead almost right away, I think.
Yeah. Oh, big time. Because Grodd, you know what? I really like this characterization of Grodd. I like the big, powerful gorilla who is intelligent, who does, who can think, but he still has that animal nature at his base, at his core, and that is who he is. He is, there is the animal in there. Yeah, he's able to formulate plans and strategy and whatnot, but he is still this giant gorilla. So he still has the beastly nature to him, and I love seeing that. And this was something, again, the second, third read through that I really got to see some of the gore, but it's like cool gore. It's artistic gore. There is a kind of there is kind of a beauty to him just bashing in his fellow ape's skull, his father's skull, and feeding on the brain. And I know that sounds like an odd statement to make, but it was like that opening page where you see Grodd eating the brain. And the one bottom panel, I never noticed his father's face right there in the last where it says fear, right in the R. That's the father's face. And you can kind of see the entry point, just the tip of it. It's not too bad. But then, because I was always focused on Grodd with the blood and drippings and the brain in his hand. And you start looking at the background, start looking at the details around him. And I'm like, man, this is really cool.
I love the movement of the gorillas. You see Grodd jumping up the side of that monument that brought Barry in, using that as a leaping off point to overtake Barry. Barry, who doesn't remember who he's the Flash, so you notice the costume's not lit up at all. He's not accessing his powers because he doesn't have the memory. Yeah. So it's funny how that's affecting his connection to the Speed Force to a certain extent.
Yeah, oh, definite. And I was laughing because when he starts running, I'm like, dude, you could outrun Grodd. What the heck? And we don't initially know everything that's going on with him. So I liked that kind of again, cool art sequence where you got him. Barry's looking at his face like, huh? You can talk? Where am I? You're no messenger. Messenger dessert. I'm out of here. And you see this, the panic, the big eyes, oh no, kind of panic in his face as he's trying to run away from a gorilla, and good luck doing that. And it was a cool usage of who Grodd is.
I like this whole sequence inside the Speed Force with Iris. How Iris is now going to have an opportunity to see. I see Iris is now becoming a Flash fan because I'm guessing the Flash is going to save them. When the Flash saves them, I wonder if this is going to make her. She's going to be the one that's going to kind of broadcast that the Flash is a good guy.
Yeah.
Let people know that, hey, this is somebody you can trust. He saved us. Look, he brought us all back. Is this going to make him the hero that he's currently not to people? I don't know.
Yeah, he's kind of losing some fan points there, big time. And this is a neat concept of the Speed Force and the fact that he pulled them into the Speed Force. And I like the fact that they're first like, hey, why would he leave us here? Well, the Flash wouldn't leave us here. He probably doesn't know we're here yet. And they're kind of, formulating their own plans, kind of developing a team. And you just hear that growling sound in the background. Like, that doesn't sound good.
I like the Pied Piper discussion because I always liked the Pied Piper as being a good guy. I like the idea that he was a villain who changed his ways and reformed. I don't know if they're going that route with him, but I really enjoy when he's having this reaction with his boyfriend and at the police station that we see how he could potentially wind up being connected with Barry Allen and becoming friends. I don't know. I'm hoping that that's what ends up coming out of this, I'm hoping he doesn't turn out to be a rogue because I've always liked him being the Flash's ally. I like him having a buddy that he can work with. But in this world in particular, having a vigilante working with you is a negative. It would shatter a lot of the public's image of you because the public doesn't trust them.
Yeah.
So I like that there's that tentative relationship there with vigilantes. I know, and I agree with Hartley when Hartley's saying this isn't about Pied Piper, it's about our relationship. But it is, David going to that does make a lot of sense.
Oh, definite. And again, this is real world story, real world elements being brought into this, into the comic book universe. So it's kind of neat to see an actual concept that could there are probably discussions like this going on out there. It's not about this. It's about our relationships. About the fact that we're and they don't even. It's neat because they dance around it. We know exactly their relationship. They're dating and they're both gay, but they it's that the one obviously is still in the closet. He's still keeping it a secret, and the other was like, hey, you can't hide who you are. And I see the Pied Piper. I'm hoping we'll get that hero Pied Piper, but I'm willing to bet that we're going to get the rogue Pied Piper because he's misunderstood, because they don't understand that he's there to help. And hopefully his boyfriend will help him and cover and protect him. But I see this going bad for him. I see it, kind of turning his back because he doesn't want to make himself public. He doesn't want to put himself out there or risk any perceived negativity that could happen to him. So I kind of see a love scorn turning Piper more towards the rogues as opposed to the hero. But he really is a decent guy who can someday be brought back to the light.
I like the guerrilla culture and that there's elders, and I hope we see Sullivar. I always liked that concept that there was this leader of the guerrillas that Flash had a connection with and that they were friends and allies, and Grodd would come in from time to time to try and overtake them. But I love this idea of it's the end of your culture. And the prophecy is that when this messenger shows up, it's going to mark the end of their time. Could you imagine if a messenger showed up and marked the ends of humans? That would cause division.
Oh, big time.
There would be people like these elders that would have this like Zen aspect of accepting that this is the way things are meant to be. But I think a lot more people would be like Grodd when he's overhearing this. It's one of the things that I really liked about this version of Grodd. Yeah, right from the beginning of what we've seen from the character, there's this brutality there that right away you feel he's a bad guy. But in this moment, I'm like, I understand him. I'm not saying I agree with him. I think the elders are making logical sense. But Grodd, like, sitting there going, wait a minute. I think I'm going to feast on the messenger's brain here, and I'm going to find out what he knows, so that way I can bring a change and actually save our culture and take over the world. I don't know. That's one of those things that I really liked about this issue, was that it made sense, Grodd's motivations. And I think that's really important in a good villain. The motivations need to make sense.
We'll talk about a lot of times with Lex Luthor, where it's not just about the I am evil Lex Luthor, I want to conquer the world. It's in his own twisted sense, he's saying this is what's right for the world, my leadership. I am what's right for the world, and if you don't like it, well, you got to break an egg, you got to break a couple eggs to make an omelet. Grodd has a similar feeling towards it, where he's fighting to protect his way of life, he's fighting to protect his ideology, he's fighting to protect the guerrilla way, and you kind of can understand that, and you can kind of feel with him and sympathize with him. Granted, it's disagree dramatically with him, but you kind of can understand him. And if the situation were reversed, if this was about the American way of life, or the human way of life, or the raging way of life, whatever you're going to do, you're going to fight for it and you're going to hold on to it. If it's something that's sacred to you and that's important to you, you will fight to keep it. Now, whether you succeed or fail, that's the unknown, and that's part of life, and that's part of the struggle. But I like seeing this side of Grodd, this understanding behind him, because I always just thought of him as the gorilla who, the gorilla with the complex, with the inferiority complex, the conquering the world complex, the gorilla who wanted to be the ruler of it all, and that's why he was doing it. Well, here it's not just about ruling; it's about protecting his people. It's about protecting what is sacred to them. Yeah, our way of life right now is going to end. Well, I'm going to lead us into something new. I'm going to lead us into something great, and we will not fade like the Mayans. We will not fade like all these ancient great societies that have disappeared off of the universe.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really liking about this as it moves forward, when you're developing this new universe and you develop different cultures and different creatures and different characters, I want to feel like, because we're looking at Africa, one of the things I love is we've got a world here where in Africa we have a Batwing operating. But Africa's huge. So you can have this guerrilla culture going on there. I'd actually love to see another hero pop up in Africa somewhere else that adds a different kind of storytelling element to Africa, if that makes sense. Because one of the things I love about Africa has been the exploration of, kind of a different look at Africa. You know what I mean, if that makes sense?
Oh, definitely. There's the continent of Africa is huge. It's a massive, and there's multiple variations on cultures and just the extremes of different ways of life that is going on over there is as extreme as it is here in North America or in Europe or over in Asia and, in the Russians. It's, there's, you can't just say, bang, this is Africa. No, there is everything around there. So I agree completely with you. I'd like to see this variations and deviations and changes and just other options that we have out there.
Or even Batwing, just exploring more of Africa.
Oh, yeah. They've got a lot of options, and they've got a lot of different ways they can go with this. And hopefully we'll get to see kind of those type of stories.
I love The Great 10, because it was exploring, the characters from China. It was nice to see, how that would change comic book storytelling. There's so many regions that can be explored in the DC universe that have never been touched before. Go to Norway. That type of thing. I'm not, and you can't do every country or every region. I'm not saying that, but I think there's some opportunities to, even like in the DC Presents book, to explore maybe some characters and regions that have never been explored before at DC. By taking a main character, maybe having them visit and meeting characters or people that live there. I don't know. I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff. And I'm glad to see the New 52. You got to be judicious in this. You've got to, you can't bring every character and make them brand new, because people just aren't going to support that. They want the iconic characters. You have to do a nice balance of, let's explore a couple new characters, and obviously there's a heavier end towards the iconic ones. It's just the way that sales work. But I'm glad they're doing more and more of this. I think it makes, to me, this whole Grodd story that much more interesting, knowing that this is somewhere else in Africa. Yeah. That Africa's huge, enormous. This can be happening there, and it would not affect a Batwing because it's just a completely different area.
Now, when they take the Flash down to the caves and they start showing him the history and who is the messenger and just how everything came out, they have that one, they call him the Star Rider, and trapped him in the light. The drawings there, do you recognize that as any Flash rogue or anything else from the Flash mythos?
No, but I want to see who the Star Rider is.
Okay. Because that was something I was trying to figure out. I'm looking, I'm like, it looks like somebody with a gas mask on to me. And I didn't know if there was a classic Flash rogue who had that type, who was encased in a bodysuit or something like that.
No, I don't remember anything like that, but I have not read every Flash story. I read the Wade run. I read the Johns run. I went back and got some of the stuff before the Wade run, and this is all with Wally West. I haven't read a lot of Barry Allen. I don't know how much of any, if there was somebody like that in Flash history. And it could be somebody that was in the Wally West run that I'm forgetting. I don't know. You read so many comics. I'm sure a lot of people listening will agree with this, that a lot of times you'll forget things that you read and enjoyed, villains that appeared, things like that. So I'm not going to pretend that I'm an encyclopedia to remember every single little detail of a comic I've read. But to answer your question honestly, no, I don't know. And I'm curious of that. That's not a throwaway. Star Rider's got to show up again, right?
Oh, big time. It's got to be one of his villains, or in a period. I'm thinking it's got to be a rogue or a character or some type of usage of him. I can't just be out there for that purpose. And you want to know something? I just noticed right now as we're talking about this.
What?
Talking about the cave drawings. When they show the messenger, when they show the runner, and you look at that cave. If you look behind him, you'll see the bottles. You'll see the beakers and the the test tubes from the lab accident that gave him his flash powers.
That's awesome. Which adds to the whole prophecy being true.
Yeah, I know, man. I never noticed that until literally this second. And I've read this book a couple times and a couple times looking at artwork. But that page, I always was focused on him.
Yeah. I'll admit I didn't notice it until you pointed it out. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I like tiny details like that. That's why I like going back and rereading. There's times where after you and I will record, I'll go back and reread. Just because something from our recording came up or triggered something. One of the things, as this is continuing, Barry's getting more and more reveals. I love that we're seeing these little tiny panels of memories of the childhood with the camera. That the fear is starting to bring back his memory.
Yeah.
You know, Grodd shows up. He's ready to kill Barry. Then all of a sudden, we're all afraid of something, Barry. There are things that scare us so bad that we feel like cowards. But the thing is, being afraid is normal. It's more than normal. It's necessary. There is no courage without fear. Remember, Barry, it's okay to be afraid so long as you don't let it stop you. I love that message. I know who I am. I'm Barry Allen. I'm the Flash. That was a hoorah page for me.
Oh, yeah.
But it was all about the build. Again, you're seeing this. Again, I muted. I don't want to downplay it. I loved the artwork in this sequence, and I loved how it almost looked like a classic film reel when you're seeing him with Mom. I love seeing, because we know the Mom's no longer with him, I love seeing that he has these vivid childhood memories of Mom stepping up for him, throwing the camera at the gorilla, as the without knowing that the tranq dart is in there. It's a mom defending her son, willing to put herself on the line. Barry remembers who he is, and we see the costume light up.
Yeah.
That was the first time we see the costume light up, and the fastest man alive is zooming out again. I was like, yes! And I knew this was going to happen when we started talking about this issue. I'm sitting here like we gave that recommendation earlier. I'm gonna cop out here and say that Flash and Nightwing are neck and neck for me. No, and I the reason why I want to say this is, we have a listener asking us which book I'd read it, and here's how I'm going to actually change my recommendation a little bit and say, I adore Nightwing. This isn't taking anything away from Nightwing. If you want to explore, because you're reading Batgirl, a little more of the Batman family, I would say Nightwing's a great companion to Batgirl for all the reasons that I stated. But, this is great Flash. I mean, this touches on everything. I think the artwork's fantastic. It's unique. I think this is every bit as good as Nightwing. I really, really do. I think this is another top-tier book. So it's not knocking Nightwing. It's really complimenting how great this book is. Because I can't talk about this book and look at this and go, ooh, I can't do anything that would diminish this. I think it's just a great, great read.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. This is absolutely fabulous read. And this page here, this was the music playing in my head. This was the dun 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 dun, the build up, and just you see just that was just such cool, just inner dialogue about and I love these true dun 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 hero moments where just you step up, over courage. Everyone's afraid, but courage is being able to overcome fear. And I love just seeing that moment where the costume first flashes up and he first gets the spark and you see that, okay, the Flash is back and now he's fighting. And even the following lines behind that, you can't outrun fear. That's why I'm running towards it, Grodd. The only way to conquer fear is to look it in the eye and face it. And that is just a great Flash moment. Again, it's these pages where he remembers who he is and he steps up and he shows why he's the hero. I love this great fight sequence, and without the buildup that we had before, without the growth and just the coming through, it's understanding who Grodd is, just that inner dialogue that we're seeing with the flashbacks to when he was a kid. All that, the build to these cool bam pop moments is what makes this a good title. This is a really solid, fun read that, I've read this multiple times, and it wasn't just for the show that I read this multiple times. No. This is a title that I do read, even if I know we're not going to talk about it. I will read this a couple times just because I know I'm going to get something else. There's going to be a little thing I missed here, a little thing I missed there. Plus, there is a better enjoyment for the content after you go through a couple times. So this is a solid recommendation on the read.
You know, I figured it out now why I'm having such trouble between those two books in particular, deciding between them. They're both characters that are filling a certain role for me. They're bright. They're true heroes. You know what I mean? There's something about both of them. Like Dick Grayson's the accessible guy that you look up to. You want to be Dick Grayson. I also want to be Barry Allen. These are great guys. You know what I mean? They're just, you consider these are real heroes. They're smiling. They're fun. They're having fun being heroes. Like, this is the kind of, like, I would hope if I'm a super, like, if they make it fun. You know what I mean? It looks like it's fun to be a hero when you're seeing these guys. Even though there's dark things going on around them, they have these moments where they just make you smile and you're like, wow, that could be so cool to do what they do. And I need that type of reading in my comic reading. I need those heroes that make me go, wow, this is cool. And they're those kind of characters. They're cool. That's my favorite. That's why I think I'm so fond of Wally. Wally always felt that way for me. Barry's feeling that way for me now. This is great. I like when Barry's fighting Grodd, that he goes after things like the helmet, like knowing I can't hurt him, but let me go ahead and utilize the helmet. Let me get that out of the way. This leads to the sequence where Grodd's angry and charging at him and bringing the whole cave down on them. Grodd did himself in, Barry didn't.
Yeah. And here's a neat thing. This didn't kill Grodd. He had a cave dropped on top of him, and he's still tough enough to survive. It knocked him unconscious, and it hurt. But he's still around. This wasn't the introduction and end of Grodd. This is just the beginning of his hatred towards the Flash. And I really was glad that they made that very clear, that Grodd's still alive. He's hurting, but this didn't kill him. And again, it shows the power that he has. And for me, it's very fitting for the gorilla. And it's, as I said, this is an intelligent gorilla, but he still has that animal nature, and Barry used it against him. It was a really cool fight sequence.
Now, when this story wraps up, Barry tells them in his own way, his message is to, you're free to decide. You can rebuild your city. Your destiny is no longer tied to Grodd or to me. He frees them. I love that sense of selflessness where he's going to give them the power. And that was something I really, really enjoyed in the whole thing, because he could have, as messenger, quote-unquote messenger, really set them on a path to kind of end themselves. He doesn't. He enables them to continue on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I took it as this last surviving elder was Sullivan.
I hope, because we don't get him nominated or named, but I hope that ends up happening, because I'd love to see that kind of relationship. The issue wraps up with us getting back with Patty. Patty has been one of those that now is very bitter about the Flash because she feels that the Flash has taken Barry away from the whole situation. Mm-hmm. And she's going to Guatemala City, which means she's not going to know Barry's back, right?
Yeah, she's going off on some, cold case that she's working now. So and I'm kind of curious to see where she goes, and because she's a character that I'm kind of digging, and I'm like, I don't want to lose her. But
she's going to the Weather Wizard.
Yeah, she's going up against Weather Wizard.
And we got a new Weather Wizard, so I'm going to be curious to see, because it's a family of them. So is there more than one? He's got the coat and the styling that looks like I'll be curious to see how this all plays out with the Weather Wizard. A brand new Weather Wizard being introduced. Barry comes back though, and Dr. Elias, how soon we forget, who's really turned on the Flash. I'm guessing because of what the Flash did with traveling through time, right?
That's my guess. The weakening the fabric of time. But again, it was the Flash who gave him the power to do the rebooting. Now, we don't know how long Barry was gone.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, there may have been, because Barry, when we're dealing with the Speed Force, who knows how long he was.
Months. They do say it. Months. Elias must have put energy cells to good use in the months I've been gone. Months.
Oh, okay.
So we do have, they actually give us a time frame. That's actually right there in the dialogue.
I see it right now. I didn't notice that. Okay, cool.
So it's been a decent amount of time. So I don't know. We'll see where things go from here. The Flash, for me, though, is a really, really exciting book, and it's one that I'm enjoying. And that any of my comments regarding Nightwing aren't diminishing Nightwing. It's more boosting up the Flash. I think these are two great examples of books that I think have been very well served in the relaunch. And Flash is, wow, just another terrific title. Actually, it's funny. We talked about 3 very different titles, but all 3 of them have something in common in the sense that I think they're all very unique and very great representations of each of the characters. I think that this is the kind of Flash that I want to read. Flash should be fun.
Yes.
It can have dark things happen, but you want to... Barry's the guy you want to be, and he makes you excited about heroes and being a part of that world. And I just think this is fantastic. Just a great, great book.
Great molecules! They're programming the computers for a chain reaction to blow up that atomic pile!
Want to shout out our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. And you can get that on our show notes and on our website as well. Please consider calling in. We love having you part of the show. And your comments and commentary a lot of times leads our discussion in directions that we never even considered going. So please, we consider this to be an interactive show. Also check out our Facebook group. We're on Google+. We would love having you a part of both of those as well. We love the interaction with all of you. Once again, sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, remember, Superman Earth 1, Volume 2, the hardcover, $22.99 regularly, 40% off, only $13.79. You can still pick up Volume 1 for them for only $11.99. So if you haven't picked that up, it's a good time to grab both of those volumes. They're highly recommended. Over at InStockTrades.com, Batman Detective Comics, the hardcover, Volume 1, called Faces of Death, collecting the first 7 issues of the brand new Detective Comics series. Tony Daniel on art, and various. $22.99 regularly, 50% off, only $11.50. As I mentioned, they're doing all kinds of deals of the week, and orders of $50 or more give you free shipping over at InStockTrades.com. So if there's some trades or collected editions that you've been looking forward to grabbing, remember to do that. I'm looking at, like, right now they've got that Absolute Batman Dark Victory hardcover. It's $59.99. You get free shipping on that just from going to their site. So it's 40% off already from the sale discount, plus you get free shipping on that, which saves you a few bucks. So consider shopping at InStockTrades.com if you're not already doing that, and we want to thank them for supporting our show. Jim, on our next episode, we're going to talk Ravagers number 1 for sure. We're going to talk Earth 2 number 2 for sure, because we want to talk about this controversy or whatever. I don't know if you can call it controversy, because I don't know if I've heard a whole lot of negative buzz about this. So I'm really excited to talk about the second issue of it, just because we know about the changes to Alan Scott, and just to see how we feel about it, because you and I, as of this recording, have not read that issue yet. So I'm excited to read Earth 2 number 2 and see what's going on there and talk about it next week. Plus, we'll also pick 2 more books to chat about. So we will see everyone next week.
Bye.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and flaws and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Are closing in, be they Thanagard or Egyptian. Working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call